Welcome everybody to our tea party for Umineko Tea Legend of the Golden Witch. I'm very excited. I've been wanting to do a podcast about the Umineko series for many years now, and to finally be able to see that become a reality is like such a huge deal to me. I'm very excited. So let's just start by introducing the cast. I'm Aspiredy, I'm your host today, founder of Rockenjima, and basically I've been a fan of Umineko since about episode 5 came out. So, like, midway through the series, I was kind of following along with the translation patches, and that was, like, really exciting. And getting involved with the community there was, like, such a unique experience to me because you could, like, have this space to, like, speculate about each upcoming episode and, like, generate theories with the community before the next one comes out and completely blows all your theories out of the water. So what I'm trying to do here with Rockenjima is, like, create a space for people new to Umineko to discuss this series, like, gradually and build upon theories and just, like, have, like, people that haven't read the series to talk about and bounce ideas off. And I think that's something really valuable that you probably couldn't get if you just went to a random place on the internet, because someone just might spoil you of shit, and that would suck. Anyway, so I'd like to introduce our first cast member, Rabla.
Hello everybody, I am happy to be here on the Rockenjima world. Oh, I am brand new to the franchise. I've been hearing Aspie talk about it forever, and I'm finally getting the chance to play it thanks to Manga Gamer and their localization.
And we have Notkion.
Hello everybody, I am also new to the Umineko franchise. The only other When They Cry or 07th series that I've read has been Higurashi. So I'm looking forward to getting basically more of that here.
Mm-hmm. And we also have Seraphitic.
Hello. I, just like Rabla and Notkion, I am brand new to Umineko. I have watched the Higurashi anime and read a little bit of the visual novels that have been coming out on Steam, but as for Umineko, brand new, only read chapter 1.
Sweet. Yeah, so basically the Umineko Tea Party, what we're doing is, over the course of 2 weeks, this first episode we did for 3 weeks, we get the whole community together to read through Umineko together and basically share our impressions on the forum. We're looking for lots of people that are new to the series to kind of push the discussion forward, because we want the unbiased opinions of people who don't know what's going on yet, because that's like the biggest joy of the people who have finished the series, is just reading the first impressions of newcomers. That's kind of what this podcast is doing. I've got 3 people here that are completely new to Umineko, so they're going to be able to share their unbiased opinions. Except for Rabla, he read episode 2 when I told him not to.
Umineko's really good.
Why to do
It's
it?
really good.
So we're not going to be talking about any content beyond episode 1. So if you're up to speed with that, then you've got nothing to worry about for spoilers. Now then, before we get too stuck into things, I'd just like to direct our attention to the 30-second recap by Seraphitic. He's going to cover the story of Umineko episode 1 in 30 seconds. Are you up for the challenge, man?
We will find out very shortly, in about 30 seconds,
believe in
I
you.
imagine. Meet the Ushiramiyas, a family designed to make you feel better about not calling grandma. Watch as they argue about which of them is failing the most at their business. Delight as they are brutally killed off one by one in strange and mysterious ways. Puzzle over why they didn't just stick with the lady with the shotgun. Marvel over how creepy Maria is. Laugh at the terrible, oh dear lord my eyes sprites. And finally, think you've forgotten Door of Summer, and then have it randomly pop into your head like a spirally demon tick. Enjoy your tea, and welcome to Umineko no Nakokoro ni.
Very good. Welcome to Rockenjima. It's very calm compared to the game itself.
That sounds delightful.
It did rhyme. I was very glad for the ending to rhyme. I was happy.
Excellent. So it was released in Summer Comic Kit of 2007. This was 07's expansion's second visual novel, of course the first being Higurashi When They Cry. And so basically they had this weird sort of titling thing where they called Umineko When They Cry 3, because apparently the second half of Higurashi was When They Cry 2, and even though they're completely not connected at all. For some reason, they decide to call us When They Cry 3.
Instant confusion.
I guess. I guess it's sort of a pitch to people who are fans of the original. They're like, oh, it's a new Higurashi. And then they read it, it's like, where the fuck is Rika and Rena, and what the hell is this? But yeah, so it's completely different setting, completely different characters. But I guess the one thing they share in common is that sort of sense of murder mystery and, like, developing that. And this one is very much, the setting is very traditional for the murder mystery genre. We have a bunch of people trapped on an island during a typhoon, and then we have a bunch of closed room murder mysteries, and yeah, it's, the whole setting feels very Western, even though it's Japanese. Like, they make a big point of Kinzo being this Westophile, and just, like, everything in his family is, like, dedicated to his love for Western culture, and it's like he's got a very super Western mansion. Everyone has, like, Western names, and they got their butlers and everything. It's the full setting, and so I guess, like, you're reading that and you're like, so what does this have to offer from, like, classics like And Then They Were None? And I guess the idea here is that Umineko kind of does some interesting things with his presentation, and I think the really big thing that stands out for most people reading this is the question of, were the murders completed by a magician or a witch, or were they completed by a human? And that's kind of the central conflict of episode 1, is determining that whether a hypothetical 19th person, a witch, exists, or whether we need to start doubting one of our family or friends. And I think that's a really cool setup, and I don't know, it's something that's really appeals to me. I don't know if it was sold well at the time, but it definitely had a bit of a cult following when it happened, and it kind of still does, enough for Rock Enjima to exist now.
Hey.
But yeah, so I don't know. So what are your first impressions of Umineko, having read episode 1? Notcom, what did you think of it?
I thought it was pretty neat. Going through it right away, I was familiar a little bit with Higurashi, so I was expecting a similar sort of setup. But instead of following the sort of, we're going to try to scare you approach, they took the, we're going to just throw you right into it. And it took a little while to get to there, but you knew that something was coming. Mm-hmm. And then
it has a slow
you just
start.
end up with, yes. And then you end up with all of these characters that you have to try to keep track of, and you start wondering, okay, they're giving me all of this information, what do I do with all of this? And they throw in the murders, the locked room murders, and you have to figure out, how would someone do this? Was it actually a witch? Was it me? And I found the entire contrast with that and the cast size to be very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And just
18 people is
fun.
a lot for a murder mystery.
That is a lot, yeah. And, you know, when you're going through it, you also have to wonder, is, you know, the point of view that the story is being told from a sane point of view? Can I actually trust this point of view? And so it gives you a lot to think about, and I appreciate that.
I'd like to go into more about that, but I'll focus on getting other impressions first. Rabbler, what are your first thoughts of Umineko?
It's definitely a unique story compared to a lot of the other stuff in the genre, I guess. I haven't read anything else. Like, I've read murder mysteries before, but the interest that it's not... The mystery isn't the murder, it's how were the murders done, and whether do you believe in magic? It's like, did it have to be magic, or was it humans? And it's not directly focusing you on who did it. It's like, did the witch do it, or can you prove that someone else did it? It's
kind of like, it's less specific in how it's not like asking you to directly solve how each murder was committed. It's more like, can you like provide evidence that it could be done by something that is not a witch? It's kind of like a different way of looking at it.
They don't necessarily want you to solve the murder, as long as you can figure out enough that you can say, I know someone did it, you are technically winning. Because they're trying to force you into situations where you cannot admit that someone could have possibly done this thing that's happened.
Yeah. It's kind of an interesting twist on the genre, I think.
Hmm.
Seraphitic, what did you think?
I mean, I'm in full agreement with Radla. Like, I thought it was interesting that they didn't exactly force try and make you solve the mystery per se, so much as show that it might be a solvable mystery. And
is it solvable
I've
or not? Is the central question here.
Yeah, exactly. And like I've read a bit of Agatha Christie and stuff, and that's always been sort of okay, who done it?
Mhm.
This one's sort of more of a how was it done?
How done it?
How done it?
How done it? Yeah,
That's
exactly.
generally how they got it.
Yeah, and also I really love fantasy works, and so like including all this sort of magic and fantasy and witches and purgatory and demons and everything like that. Like I love having all of that thrown into my mystery and blend it all up and given to me in a nice confusing pile that I have to untangle.
So,
I really love the idea.
Are you accepting that Umineko is a fantasy story?
I mean, so, yes and no. I mean, like it's not just mystery, but it's also not just fantasy. It's a bit of both, and I love both parts. So, yeah.
Oh, cool. So I just want to go back to something that Notcon said earlier. A lot of people in the Discord chat are drawing attention to it. Is you were talking about how whether you're questioning if the perspective is sane or not, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah. So like, what brings that to mind?
Well, it's basically the problem of you can't know in advance whether the narrative that you are presented is actually sane, because you do have parts that come from a first-person perspective, but then you also have parts that come from a neutral third-party perspective, just a general narrative. And because there is a switching there, it makes me suspect that I have to pay extra attention to different perspectives. And it wasn't just the perspective of the protagonist, or at least who I assume is the protagonist in this series, Battler.
Yeah.
But there is also Natsuhi. We had a little bit of her own perspective thrown in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, at each of these points, you have to question, is any of the information that I'm getting here objective, and is it coming through in a manner that I can trust?
Yeah. I think that's like a common theme of Osen's expansion stories is you need to be very critical of the perspective, the narration, that kind of thing. Just like, it's definitely a very good attitude to have because you never know what's going on there. But like, in particular, I do find it especially interesting that Umineko uses multiple narrators. Most of the time we're following Battler's perspective because he's giving comments on like his views of people and like all of the characters are kind of introduced through him. But then we do have those shifts to people like Natsuhi where suddenly like we're getting their internal thoughts. And it's just like it's interesting how the perspective just switches seamlessly like that. And it's not just Natsuhi, like there are other cases where the narrator becomes a distinct persona. Can you think of any others like that?
One that springs to mind is when George and Shannon are talking in the Rose Garden at night. It does seem like it switches to sort of a third-person perspective, but also it's commenting on how people are feeling and everything, and sort of adding their own, I guess, viewpoint on what's happening.
Yeah, there are some points where you begin to question, like, is this a character narrating it, or is it just an omniscient narrator? Do you guys think that's bad writing, or?
I think it's decent. I didn't find it to be jarring or off-putting or anything like that, and I found that in approaching the story that way and in approaching the narrative that way, it gives us more as a reader to work with, and that's really what I want to see from mystery works in general. It's just having more to work with.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, it does sort of throw some things into confusion. I mean, because now you have another perspective to deal with. Generally in mystery novels, if if you're only dealing with the detective's perspective on things, you know that they're they're on the good side. They're not trying to trick you. They're not trying to lie to you.
Mm-hmm.
And you only have to question one person's sanity, I guess, if you're questioning anybody's sanity, rather than maybe Battler's going crazy, but it's only Battler that I have to worry about, his perspective on things, not Natsuhi and some unknown third person. And I can't remember any other perspectives that are offered, but I agree with you in some ways, Nakyon, about it giving you more to work with, but it also might give you too much to work with at times. At least that's what I felt.
Oh, well, that's definitely a thing you're going to get with Osen's expansion works, is they give you too much to work with. Just look at fucking Higurashi Chapter 1, like, holy shit, it's just ridiculous. It's just like, what the fuck am I supposed to make of this? But Umineko's not too different. There is a lot going on here that's just going to, like, throw you off course, and it's just like, well, which side do I tackle this from? Is this a mystery or a fantasy? I don't know. I know, like, Aizen Kobu, notably on the forum, has submitted to the witch entirely, and he's like, yeah, a witch did it. Which is quite interesting to see. So, yeah, okay, I just want to jump into something, because we have kind of danced around this. Notkyun, do you think Battler's perspective is reliable, or are there any points where it becomes unreliable?
I think Battler's perspective is relatively reliable, however he is lacking some knowledge, because he has been out of the family for some amount of time. So I feel that there are points where there could have been more that he might have been able to provide, but is unable to. And that might also be the other way around. He might be less biased because he's been around this part of the family for less time.
I feel like that is kind of intentional. Like, they kind of left him as, like, someone who's been out of the family for a while as an excuse to give the reader someone to relate to. Like, he's kind of just re-entering the family, like we are just meeting his family for the first time. And so we can kind of get that sort of unfiltered lens. Like, we don't have to, like, suspect that he might be in on some grand murder mystery because, like, he hasn't seen any of these people for 18 years. It kind of, like, frees him of a lot of suspicion, which is helpful for the reader, because you want to, like, you want to eliminate as many people as possible as potential culprits, and it's difficult when you end up suspecting your own narrator.
Yeah, so when I was reading through the story, I tended to just trust him in general. I am still a little bit cautious, but for
caution is good.
For my theories, I've been trusting of his perspective mostly.
Okay. But you said that you were questioning his sanity. Are there any points which would have led you to that conclusion?
No.
No?
Let me explain.
Okay.
I'm just cautious of his sanity, and I'm looking out, especially when we go into future episodes, to see if there's anything that can lead me down a different path with what I've seen so far in Umineko.
Okay.
So, that's really all it is.
You're just trying to look at things from
trusting.
different angles, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That's a very wise attitude to approach a story with. Just don't deny anything. Okay, so yeah, let's just get general thoughts on the cast. We've talked about Battler a bit, but we probably don't have time to talk about everyone. But there are any particular characters that stood out to you? Rabbler, I'll be posing this
Maria.
to you. Oh, Maria?
We should start with Maria.
You jumped.
I'm fine with that.
Let's go.
Let's go with that one.
What?
Go ahead, Rabbler. I'll leave this one.
What the fuck's wrong with Maria? What happened? So,
I mean, like,
there's just... It's hard to tell whether something is explicitly wrong, or if she's just... How do I explain it? It's like a childlike belief. but she does seem to be more aware of stuff than she should be.
What stuff specifically?
A lot of the... I guess it can tie into the childlike beliefs, but she seems a bit too calm during everything.
Yes, like they noted that she didn't even react to her mother's death.
Yeah.
Which is creepy.
That was really odd. Yeah.
And it's even more odd when you consider that just that morning, she was freaking out because she didn't know where Rosa was. Like, she woke up all of the cousins that morning because she didn't know where Rosa was.
Yeah, because she was scared. She wanted her mother. And then...
Yeah.
That happens.
And then her mother's dead, and all of a sudden she's like, oh, time to be creepy.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
What if we interpret...
All good, guys. It's all good.
There's probably different ways of interpreting this. Like, maybe, her mother's death kind of flipped a switch, and she sort of entered creepy Maria mode as a defense mechanism.
Yeah, she could have had a mental shield. I could see that.
It's like, I have
That
no emotions,
could
I'm a
be.
fucking witch. or a witch fanatic, either way.
She could,
That could be, but...
It's very obvious Maria is aware of the legend of Beatrice and the legend of the Golden Land. She could... I didn't consider this before, but she could, as a defense mechanism, she could immediately be... well, she's shocked and she's defaulting to her knowledge, and she goes, oh, well, if we get to the Golden Land, I'll see Mum again. So everything's fine.
Yeah, I'd say that's almost believable. There are points that are really, I really feel like the singing and the whole, like, I'm going to ignore, like, all these murders happening behind me scene is, like, really creepy. and it kind of makes you want to default to just suspecting her, I feel.
I don't know, I actually felt like that was one of the more believable things because of how extreme the situation was. That would be a point where I would expect someone's mind to actually break, and they do unpredictable things like that. But
that's true. It's like the whole extremity of the situation is turning logic upside down almost.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I can understand Maria breaking for her mom being killed like that, but I don't exactly understand her doing it for the final 3 murders. Not counting Natsuhi, of course. Because she didn't really have any particular attachment to any of the final 3. I can understand her breaking because of the violence, but apparently she didn't see the violence. So it would seem like she wouldn't break because of that. I don't know. That's just my own perspective.
That's assuming she's stabilized after Rosa died again. Like, you could see it as she's very broken the entire time.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of thinking.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, that is possible too.
Do you think it's possible for her to be, like, an accomplice?
That's the real question, isn't it? Because she was given the umbrella and letter. So...
I think it's possible, but I wouldn't count on it.
I think the family knows about her tendencies for the witchcraft thing, and so
yeah, they do.
Even if she's not a willing accomplice, it'd be easy to use her as a device.
Yes, which they did for like the letter.
Well, obviously someone did.
Yeah.
Because Beatrice doesn't exist.
Someone calling themselves Beatrice exists.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun.
Rabla already firing shots.
Magic is bullshit.
Unless Maria is lying and, like, Beatrice never existed in the first place.
Oh, Mario did it. Okay, mystery solved.
That's another possibility.
See, you could think that, but then...
Yeah.
Could Maria do the handwriting that well, and did you get the seal?
That is true.
So many
the handwriting.
She is talented at handwriting.
She is She's apparently a very talented artist, isn't she?
Didn't you notice how eloquently she started talking whenever she would go into witch mode? She's clearly intelligent.
Yeah.
That shit is creepy. Like, the whole point about how, like, she can't say the word messenger correctly, and then it's like, she's just reading out that whole letter, like, completely fluently. It's like, what the fuck? That switch is like, and that's when the music Fishy-Arama starts playing, and then it's like, oh shit, what's going on here?
That is quite possibly one of my favorite parts in all of the Chapter 1.
I think it's a defining moment of Chapter 1 where things actually start getting interesting.
Yeah, definitely at that point.
And that's like the whole point. There is Beatrice challenging you, and by extension, the family, to like, you know, figure out the epitaph. I guess is not her intention, but to us, it's like, you know, game on. We're going to figure out who you are, Beatrice.
Yeah, it's fun.
For me, it started getting more interesting at the beach scene, even though that was a much tamer part of the story.
Really?
And it was just because they were trying to go through what the epitaph was, at least. And they were raising different possibilities and giving us some information. But as it turned out, that wasn't actually all that important, it seems.
Well, yeah, it's just kind of like,
it seems.
they just keep ignoring the epitaph.
Which is why they had a bad end. They said that.
Yeah, it's entirely their fault. They should have tried harder.
They should have tried harder. Exactly.
Like a report card at the end, D-. Must try harder.
Yeah, it's like F, didn't even look at test.
Okay, talking about other characters, so like, let's just do in general groups. Let's talk about the siblings, like the siblings and their partners, like I guess like the adults of the crew. How do you feel about this part of the cast?
I disliked Kraus.
You do?
You don't like Kraus?
No, not at all.
Really?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, he's sort of a jerk, but they all kind of are, so I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know, Rudolph is kind of likable because he has a personality to him that's just like, I don't know, more quirky, but Kraus is just kind of
true.
just a dick.
Yeah, he kind of doesn't have a personality. I did sort of like the scene where he's kind of outsmarting all three of the other siblings.
Yeah.
I did like that too.
That sort of won me over a little bit.
Yeah.
Actually,
But you can be smart and still a dick.
I'm a big fan of his new sprite. I really feel
true.
like it emphasizes his snobbiness.
Do we want to, just for like a minute, address the new art?
Yeah, I guess we should, yeah. Like, we obviously have two choices here with the Manga Gamer edition. We have the original Ryokishi art, and we also have the new Manga Gamer art, which was by like the people who did the art for the Pachinko game. What do you guys think of this as someone who's just getting into Umineko?
I love the new art.
I enjoyed the Steam art. I did also see the PS3 art before, and screenshots and stuff, and I liked that as well. The original art is fine by me, but I just prefer the newer art in general.
No, I like all the art. I don't particularly enjoy the new sprite for Battler. It sort of makes him look like a bad guy almost. I don't know why. His face just looks really. His face looks kind of angular. That it sort of has that bad guy look to it. I don't know. I can't explain it, but that's just sort of the impression I get.
That's an interesting impression.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, because looking at the PS3 art, like his face is like kind of round and really friendly looking, and he looks kind of open, like I picture him to be. Whereas in the I don't know, in the Manga Gamer art, his face is like really triangular, and he just sort of doesn't look as open and friendly as I feel he should.
That's interesting.
Just personal preference. I don't know.
Could it be that they went for trying to make him look a little bit more like Rudolph? Rudolpho?
Could be.
Yeah, I could see that. I can definitely see that. That resemblance is stronger in the new art.
Also, all of the siblings look older than either the original art or the PS3 art makes them
I
look,
think so
which
too.
I actually
I
really
think so
like.
too.
Yeah, me and SP had a rather long conversation about the art before, where we were specifically talking about how the older characters do very well convey their age in the new art compared to the previous two art styles.
Ava looks fucking old
Ava
now.
Ava has
She
fantastic.
does. That was what made me realize it.
It does look like she has seen some days.
Yeah. She looks like a weary woman. Yeah, well, I really actually like that. Like lots of people, there has been a lot of backlash towards this new Steam art on like just people who are reading it. And I think a lot of those people were kind of like brought up on the PS3 art, which by the way, you're not meant to have because it's a game that hasn't been translated.
Well, you mean you can't read Japanese?
Well, yeah, sure, if you can read the Japanese.
Hey.
Anyway, yeah,
Well,
it's like, I feel like the PS3 art is very clean. It has very much a strong anime aesthetic to it, whereas the new art kind of has its own sort of unique style. It feels less generic and more stylized. And
I agree.
I feel like the new art is definitely trying to accommodate the best of both worlds by giving the characters lots of expression and lots of details that really convey a lot of information to the reader. Like we're just talking about how the adults look particularly aged, and I think that's if you're looking for a good experience of reading Umineko, I actually really recommend using these new sprites because they may seem a bit different at first because different is bad. Oh no, this isn't the PS3 version. But give it a chance, guys. I think you'll like really come to like it.
That is very polished.
And I really liked how Maria looked in the Manga Gamer sprites as opposed to the PS3 ones. Because she looks really deranged in the Manga Gamer ones, and not so much in the PS3 ones.
No, they got a good thing going on for Maria, but I like how the relative height of the characters is especially emphasized in this new art too, because Maria looks huge in some of the other art.
Yeah, like I looked at the old art, and Maria and Jessica are basically the same height in the old art, and it's like that looks bad.
Only points I'm going to subtract from this new art is every woman has giant breasts. Everyone.
That is true.
It's
It's
a bit over the top. See, Ushiromi applied. Okay.
Runs in the family.
I see. But yeah, so that's my spiel on that. I know there are some still people who are really loyal to the original sprites, but I still would recommend giving the new sprites a shot, especially if you've read Umineko once before. You know, why not try something different? I feel like you'd be pleasantly surprised. How do you feel about the servants?
They're a bit all over the place. There's some I'm not too big on, but there are some I really like. Like, Shannon and Cannon are quite a great duo together. I think I like both of them. Maybe it's just the episode, but I'm not too fond of... I get Kumasawa is meant to be like a light-hearted relief, but I don't think... I feel like she doesn't fit in as well as the other ones do. But maybe that's intentional. She seems to be quite aged, and she's not part of, like, Kinzo's crew.
Kinzo's posse.
Yeah. And the chef, there's also the chef, and he's a dick. Fuck him.
Yeah.
Goda's a dick.
Yeah. Kind of glad that he died first.
So rude.
Rude.
Sorry.
Ice cold.
Yeah.
What about
Yeah.
What about Genji?
Genji's a bro.
I love Genji. Genji was
Genji's
awesome.
pretty cool.
I really hope he didn't do it because he was cool.
Just the really cool butler that, like, I just love how, like, he always keeps his composure. Like, even when certain death is facing him, he doesn't lose his cool. What a cool butler.
He's getting, like, a gun waved in his face, and he's just like, here, take the keys. I'll be out. See ya. Let's play some chess.
Yeah.
If I die, it was just the choice of the roulette.
So many cool lines, Genji. And I guess he's not really a servant, but Nanjo kind of falls into this group a little bit as like the family doctor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have too much of an opinion of Nanjo, but he does seem like he is legitimately concerned about everybody's well-being.
Yeah.
And I can appreciate that.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's a nice old man.
He's like one of the nicer characters, I'd say.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. We don't have much time to... In spite of him being one of the ones that survives the longest, we don't really have much time to get to know him at all. Which is a little sad.
But as a set piece, his role is incredibly important because he is the one in the murder mystery that's able to do the autopsies, and so yeah, choosing whether to suspect him or not is incredibly important in moving forward with the mystery. This is just like standard mystery novel knowledge. So like as a set piece, he is extremely important. But as a character, he's just kind of neutral, and that might be intentional. Maybe they don't want us to like start suspecting him too early in the game.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. As a doctor, I sort of have to question him, though. I mean, I don't know, because he already said that Kinzo wouldn't live long last year. Like, he wouldn't live until the next one last year. And he was definitely wrong about that. And I mean, you can sort of chalk that up to, you can say, oh, well, Kinzo just has, a strong will and that kept him living, and I'm sort of like, or Nanjo might just be a really bad doctor.
Yeah,
I mean,
I guess,
know.
Well, another way to look at that, though, might just be that he cares a bit more, and so he estimates the time to be earlier on than what it actually is, just to see if maybe Kinzo actually would try to do something about that.
Yeah.
That's true.
Maybe.
But I mean, if he's been the doctor that long, he would know Kinzo pretty well, and
yeah.
I mean, it seems like anyone who knows Kinzo for like 4 minutes knows that he wouldn't give up his ways of doing things.
But even like,
although he does admit later that he doesn't know everything about him. They did say that.
Yeah. I mean, not really anyone knows everything about Kinzo. I'd say like the closest would be Genji, and there's probably even stuff he doesn't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool. Like, Kinzo's a pretty cool character in this whole setting because like he's such an enigma. Like, he's so unpredictable. He's just like he's the uncontrollable factor. So like, if you want something crazy to happen, you can just say, "Oh, Kinzo did it." He's just like he's quite convenient as a tool like that because he's always in his room and you never see him do anything. So like, if something unexpected happens, you could just be like, "Oh, he left his room and did something stupid," and then they're like, "Oh, he's not in his room anymore. He just hid under the bed and escaped when no one was looking." And everyone totally buys that because it's fucking Kinzo and he's a maniac.
Yeah, that is true. And I mean, he has his long, like, unfathomable rants that he spouts in the presence of like Kanon and Genji and everything.
That's like the first scene in the game.
Magic works. Yeah, it's him just going crazy, his whole Beatrice thing and whatever. Yeah.
To make a quick connection here, though, with Maria and Kinzo, they both seem to have that weird sort of split in their personality where they have these extremes.
Yeah. This was noted quite a bit. Where like we have like there's almost like two people living inside Kinzo. It's just like the mellow Kinzo that talks with Nanjo like they're old friends, and then it's just suddenly, "Oh, Beatrice, why?" It's just like crying and everything. It's like it's kind of like a madness that overtakes him occasionally. Yeah.
Kinzo,
so that
Kinzo just wants to protect that smile.
Yeah, I actually love that scene later in the episode where like they're into his study and it's like, "Oh wow, he was just like trying to resurrect his lost love. I totally get it." Like everyone starts empathizing with him at that moment. That was kind of sweet, even if it is twisted.
And possibly completely untrue, but whatever.
Possibly.
Possibly. You can't take that at face value. So, I know Rabbler, when we were talking about this a while ago, and you said that the cousins came across to you as the main characters of the story. Does that still hold true?
Yeah, especially like for episode 1 especially. It does seem to want you to focus on them as like the leading characters. Like, I guess my mind works in an RPG, and as like they want you to, like, you are playing as Battler, and Jessica and George and Maria seem to be with Battler. They formed the main party, and that's how I see it. But that's definitely, I think it's going to be episode 1 exclusive, because they're going to want to play with the Order of Deaths. But yeah, you tend to stick with that group for nearly the whole story in episode 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do tend to stick together for most of the events. So yeah.
It's pretty natural, though. You consider it.
Yeah, but you're right. But from the story's perspective, it's like these are your leads.
Okay. And so what do you think of them?
They seem to be... like, I guess it's unfair comparison, because I guess all 6 of the survivors at the end, at least, are the most developed characters, so I definitely have more of an opinion on the cousins than most, with the exception of probably Natsuhi. But, I think they all have very distinct personalities, which I like. George is very calm and very confident and very strong. And Battler is very...
and so mature.
Yeah, so mature. Oh, George Oni-san. I really like Battler. Battler is strong and funny and very passionate.
Yeah.
And he's got a great laugh.
Okay. Yeah, I really like Battler's passion. I think that's something which really resonates with a lot of readers. It's just, he cares a lot. And like, even when his parents die, and he hates his dad, but when he dies, he still cries his eyes out, because that's the kind of person he is. You know?
Yeah, I really like, Battler's like, I'm gonna cry right now, and then I'm done, and then I'm gonna get this damn witch.
Yeah. It just turns that into anger, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, alright, I'm done with crying. No more tears. And as for Jessica, Jessica's not as strong as the character as George and Battler, I think, and Maria. I think out of the main 4, Jessica's probably the least interesting. But she does fill a gap in the cast, and I can appreciate that, at least.
What do you think of Jessica, Seraphitic?
Depends how you define interesting. I mean, I guess we don't know as much about her as we might like, but I think that sort of makes her more interesting, because I feel like there is something more to know. Maybe not quite on the level that I feel like there's something more to know about, like, say, Maria or something like that. But I feel like there's... I don't know, because it sort of has all of a sudden, oh, Jessica really liked canon, and we didn't really see too much in terms of hints on that. So I'm sort of hoping that there's something about that in later episodes, or that gets developed more.
Yeah, it was very subtle, yeah.
Yeah, I find her interesting for the potential she has. Maybe not so much interesting for what she actually did in that in that episode.
I'd agree with that.
That's fair. She's also got the strength of being the child of the main family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So she is a lot more connected to the mansion and Rokkenjima than the rest of the cousins, rather.
Yeah, that's true. So she
also
has a utility there.
So what you're saying is that So what you're saying is that she knows more about the mansion than most people.
So yeah, so what I'm saying is Jessica knows all the secret passages and she probably killed everyone. Yeah, that's exactly.
I mean, yeah, sure. Jessica's the witch, we all know.
Respect everyone.
She has blonde hair, too.
I mean, yeah,
so-
she does have blonde hair. That is true.
Most convincing features.
Not bad.
There's
Not bad.
there's also, I mean, I did sort of also like how she puts on a pretty strong front, but then you have that one scene where she has her coughing fit.
Mm.
Oh,
And-
yeah.
And you read the little character thing, and it says that she actually has pretty weak lungs and everything. So
That is
maybe there is a little bit more there that we're not told. You know, like maybe there's a reason that she has. Because I mean, from what Battler said 6 years ago, when he would wrestle her, she would always win, and it would seem like wrestling somebody properly now for Jessica would probably put her into a coughing fit.
That's very true.
So
yeah.
There might have been an incident, and this is just me completely wildly speculating, but there might have been an incident within that 6 years that Battler was gone that caused her to get the weak lungs. Just as like a random example, maybe she got locked in Kinzo's room. I mean, we're told that the fumes in there are pretty strong. Maybe when she was younger that might have affected her quite strongly.
Yeah,
I
because
don't know.
she does react very like negatively to the idea of going in Kinzo's room. She's like, nope, no fucking way.
Yeah, there is that too. So you know, and she's playing with the inhaler the entire time she's in the room, as, from what I can remember.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know, just as a possibility, maybe there's a little bit more history than we see just on the surface.
I like it. Connecting different threads and generating theories. This is exciting. It could be completely wildly off and you wouldn't know, but
Yeah.
Nope.
I appreciate the
No
effort.
idea. So what you're saying is I'm completely wrong. Okay, thanks for saying.
I guess I can
confirming or
say,
denying nothing.
I do like that Jessica tries to rebel against her fate of being the leader, Ushiramiya.
Ushiromiya.
Yeah, I spent 80% of the game saying that wrong. I used to, like, how do you say it? It's Ushiramiya?
Yes.
Or is it? I used to say Uroshima.
Ushiromiya. Anyway.
Oh, just on the topic of names, I mentioned this to Aspie, but when they introduce everyone and they're going, because they always write it in the original kanji, and they're like, I am, and here's the kanji. It's like, oh, you can't read that. It says Ushiramiya Battler, and I specifically really like Battler's name because it is the kanji for fight and the kanji for man, and he is the fight man and he is the battler. And I'm like, that's sick.
Yeah.
That's fucking cool. Fight man. Ushiromiya
at the
fight
same
man.
It's watch out, guys. It's the
worst
fight
Mega-
man.
Worst Mega Man villain ever.
God damn it. I also like, on the topic of names, I just think Maria's name with like the cross kanji. It's like a fucking cool kanji.
Does that mean anything? Okay, I
Yeah.
stuck that into Google Translate, and I got nothing. That little cross kanji, it don't mean nothing as far as I can tell.
I literally saw that scene and like, because it comes up line by line, and in my head, I'm like, oh, that kanji's cool. And then the next line is, I think that kanji is pretty cool. I was like, oh yeah,
According to our person living in Japan in the chat right now, Pepe, that kanji means rank.
Oh,
Ah, thank you, Pepe. I appreciate it.
thanks, peeps.
Also, I should draw attention to the fact that she has that little crown on her head. It kind of reminds me of chess. And like, Umineko has that sort of like chess thing going on throughout the whole game.
That crown seriously threw me off when I first met Maria. I was like, why does she have a crown on her head? What is going on with her? And I mean, it was explained that she was like 9 and everything. I'm like, okay, I guess I can sort of see a 9-year-old just randomly wearing a crown on her head. And I mean, I didn't even notice it towards the end, but like at first I was like, this little kid, what?
Yeah, speaking of, Maria's outfit is pretty elaborate compared to a lot of the cast.
I wonder if that
That
was
is true.
Rosa's influence. Who knows?
Although even,
Oh, yeah,
even
right.
Rosa wears a pretty plain outfit overall.
Yeah.
Maria is like one of the most colourful cast members, design-wise.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I guess they needed a colourful lolly to attract people. Yeah, that's right. Like, Rosa is like, she owns a fashion shop or company. I can't
Yeah,
remember the
that does make
specifics.
sense.
She works in fashion.
Yeah.
She manages a design company.
Yeah, there you go.
I have the chart open.
One thing I found interesting was when they were describing Rudolph, and it's like he works in a niche industry, and I'm just like, oh, what niche is that, Rudolph? Oh, God knows. But I'm infinitely curious about that.
I would love to find out. Yeah.
We're all just like sitting in anticipation of all these siblings just financially collapsing. I think, at least I am. I'm trying to figure out how they're all even possibly making a living, because it sounds like everything is going on with their businesses.
More than anything, they all need a lot of money right now.
I was waiting for you to fucking find a spot to put that in. I was like, he's gonna say this during the podcast at some point.
God damn. Alright, so we spent a lot of time talking about the cast. I think it's time to start delving into the mystery. So guys, you ready to do some mystery solving?
Oh dear lord.
Mysteries sound hard. That's not what I signed up for at all.
I came for a good novel.
After your wall of text, Nakyan, I don't think you get to say anything about.
Oh.
I can't really talk, but
Alright, so let's start going through in sequence. Let's start with the very first mystery presented to us, and that is the letter given to Maria. Now, for these conversations, I'm going to be pretty much just letting you guys handle it. I'm going to throw you into the fray here, so I want you to start collaborating and speculating what you think is going on here, who you think gave the letter to Maria and the umbrella. So you can, just whoever feels like jumping in, take the lead.
I think that before we get into that specifically, it's also important to note that right before then, when it started raining, Kinzo did throw his ring out of his window, which, if I recall correctly, faced the courtyard to the mansion, which you can only get to through the mansion itself. So it would have to be someone who is able to get that ring, or Kinzo would have had to have used the ring beforehand, which seems unlikely. So, I think that's an important thing to know. Beyond that, I don't really know. It seemed like there were a lot of people who were actually technically capable of getting that set up.
Yeah. But specifically meeting Maria in the rain is especially interesting, I think.
I did have... Okay, so... in terms of who had access to the courtyard, we're told that none of the doors to the courtyard lock later on, after Cannon is stabbed in the chest. So it wouldn't be a matter of keys, exactly. As far as I can remember, the only people in the guest house who would not have access to the courtyard are the cousins. And I think all of the servants are in the mansion at this point, as well as all of the siblings. So I think just about anyone could have gotten the head's ring from the courtyard at that point. I think, let's see, right before then, right before they pick up Maria again, and she has the umbrella, Cannon does come from the mansion to the guest house, which would have brought him through the rose garden. And he says that he didn't see Maria, but then again, if he did give the letter and the umbrella to Maria, then of course he wouldn't say that he met Maria.
Mm-hmm.
So Cannon is kind of one of the more suspicious ones. The other one that I actually thought was sort of suspicious was, ironically, Rosa.
Yeah.
And the reason that I have for that, one, she was the one asking, which would, I mean, in one sense it makes her less suspicious, but on the other hand,
If you flip the
she's the one
chessboard
asking,
around.
yeah, it does make her the least suspicious. So, sort of thinking from the person who gave the letter's perspective, you would want to make yourself seem above suspicion. And that's sort of what you can do by asking who gave the umbrella to Maria.
It doesn't really get you anywhere thinking too much about that.
And the other thing was, okay, so if you are someone who is wanting to give an umbrella and a letter to Maria, you would have to know where Maria was. Now, it's not particularly compelling to say that Rosa and the siblings are the only ones who know where Maria is at that time.
He's been murdered!
Oh no! So fitting. I'll find the killer and get my face. It's like he was onto something. He was onto something.
Oh no! He caught on.
Am I back now?
You're back.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
That's really
It just
funny.
suddenly dropped. Oh dear.
That's
The
really
witch is
funny.
trying to sabotage me, guys.
I might actually leave that in the podcast.
I was
Continue.
killed off just so. Yeah. So I mean, I guess anyone could have gone from the mansion to the guest house to give the stuff to Maria, but they wouldn't have known that they would have needed an extra umbrella.
That
Plus,
is
they, I mean, assuming that they themselves had an umbrella, which we don't know, to be fair. But also, we're not.
true. Yeah, it's true.
It's sort of like, it seems like the person who gave the stuff to Maria knew that Maria was in the rose garden, and the only other person aside from the cousins that I know of who knew that Maria was out there was Rosa.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's not particularly compelling, but it is maybe a slight nudge in that direction. Plus, Rosa would have known that Maria was isolated at that time, still in the rose garden looking.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah.
It's not particularly compelling, I'll admit, but it is maybe something to consider.
Yeah, like
It is implied right before they all head out that Rosa isn't entirely aware that she did stay in the rose garden, even if it is something she knew based on her personality that she would do. She doesn't seem to actually know. That's why she's talking to Genji about it before she heads out.
unless she's just making that up as a cover.
Mm-hmm.
It is stated that she was taking a nap from I think, just a kind of neutral perspective or narrative. So I don't know if I would fully consider that. And there's also a couple of other candidates as well, and that any of the servants could have, because they were moving around. And just information about Rosa being in the Rose Garden could have made it to anybody's ears.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, as everyone was moving back into the mansion, somebody could have just mentioned it in passing, or somebody could have seen her in the Rose Garden
Yeah.
on their way through.
It's not like a super They don't give us a lot to work with this particular mystery. I think it's just like there's lots of people who could have done it, and there's only so much we can work on. But yeah,
But there is one more thing I want to add to that, though.
yeah, sure.
We don't know for sure that she received the letter right then.
Mm-hmm.
That is true.
Maybe the umbrella, but she could have had the letter on her from an earlier time.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's a perspective trick, where we're led to believe that she received the letter just then.
That is true. That is very true.
Yeah. I was gonna bring that up if not John did it.
And that just breaks the mystery open even more.
When did she get it then?
We've got nothing to work with.
Then you have to consider, okay, so assuming that the letter wasn't delivered to her at that point, how was the seal put in place? Because if it was after Kinzo threw the ring, then it's very easy. Someone went out, picked up the ring, and wrote the letter, stuck it in, sealed it. Pretty easy. If it wasn't, then you have to consider, okay, did someone forge the seal? Was Kinzo's ring perhaps stolen from his finger at some point and used to seal it? Maybe did Kinzo seal what he thought was something else and was in fact Beatrice's letter? You know, there's a few different options.
Or maybe he had prepared the letters in advance for somebody else.
Yeah, but you're sort of left with, okay, now there's just the issue of the seal. If the time isn't an issue, then the seal's an issue.
Mm-hmm. But like I said, we don't have a lot to work with this mystery, so
Yeah.
we might need to, like, there's lots of different interpretations you can work with, and that particular mystery doesn't deny many of them, so it's kind of like, I guess it's a good base to work from, but there's not a lot you can make for conclusive evidence of what happened at that point.
There was also
At least
there was one theory that I saw that sort of did strike me as interesting, and that is someone leaving the letter and the umbrella out for Maria to see, rather than personally handing it to her. Maria would have just understood that it was Beatrice somehow, either through some other little message or something like that.
I had trouble with that.
Yeah, I wasn't like completely convinced, but it was something I was like, okay, that could happen. I can't deny it.
Yeah, it is a possibility, but the way Maria acts makes it feel at least very clear that she has met with Beatrice during her trip on the island so far. Like, they have already made contact.
And so, what do you think Beatrice is trying to accomplish, theoretically?
Well,
Mass
besides the ritual.
Flip the chessboard around. That's what Battler's been trying to do for this episode. Is just what does the culprit want?
Assuming it's not an ancient witch, I'm not actually sure. I guess the obvious answer is they're trying to scare people into finding the gold. Which would imply it is someone who knows the gold exists.
Yeah.
Which would imply it is Kraus.
Yeah, it does. It does draw suspicion on him, or Kinzo,
or Natsuhi.
Or one of the servants who might have access to the area. Because he had the gold bar, so one of the servants could have found it. Found the area.
Maybe.
Seen him walking with it.
Maybe.
Just kind of throwing it out there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, it does seem like something that could have been discovered by a curious servant, but yeah, I don't know. It seems like Klaus would keep that pretty well hidden because he doesn't want people to believe that there's gold.
May I throw a red herring into the mix?
Oh, fine.
Oh.
What if
Go ahead.
What if someone already discovered the gold and solved the epitaph, and they just didn't tell anyone?
Okay, that would give them 2 years. They would have had to have done it in 2 years.
Why is
Yeah,
that?
because the epitaph has
because-
only been there for 2 years.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
right.
What Rebel said.
Mm.
So, I mean, possible? I mean, everyone, as far as I'm aware, everyone on the island has been there for at least 2 years. Except, of course, Battler, who was away for 6 years. So, I guess that does give any of them a chance.
Mm. And so that just opens the possibility to literally anybody. Just
Yeah.
throw you into more confusion.
Oh, good. Good that I managed to narrow it down to literally everybody on the island.
Except for Battler.
And
I predict it is one of these 17 people.
not just 17. At least let's see. There's at least 20 people. Because you have Angie, who is mentioned briefly, and
God.
Who presumably has been on the island before, and at least 2 other servants who are named, and we're told that there is more servants, and all of them would have been on the island for about 2 years. They say the average for a person is about 3 years. So there's at least several more servants who could have also potentially solved the riddle and found the gold.
Mm. But then it does kind of throw things into confusion even more, though, if you consider that they already found the gold, then why would they be wanting other people to find it? You know what I mean? It's kind of like, what's the motive here? It's it's very difficult to determine.
If you're thinking of it that way, it is someone who wants the gold that does not realize it is already being found.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know.
Can I throw out a suggestion here? Just because I like to question literally everything in every like every sentence in this entire work. Is it even gold? Is there actually like gold? Because it's quite possible, because it's kind of a riddle. Because the epitaph is sort of a riddle. Could the gold just be a figurative thing? I know we see the 1 bar of gold.
Yeah.
But that doesn't
seeing that 1 bar it's
It
meant
is-
to make you think that the whole legend is true.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it's meant to make you think. But, I mean, is it
I feel
really...
like the one-winged eagle, like, imprinted on
Stamp.
the gold, like, it's, like, forged into it. I feel like that's kind of, like, makes you think that maybe there's more of it. Because it's a lot of effort to go through for 1 gold bar to, like...
But, if you
Have
think
specific-
about what Kinzo was using it for, though, he was literally just using it to prove to a potential investor that he had more, and so he gave him that one to keep as sort of like proof.
It would be a fucking excellent trick to pull, yes.
Yeah, so if you could be like, yo, I got this gold, there's more of it, I have a lot of effing gold right here. So if you want to just, give me some of your money, I will guarantee that you will get your money back, and then some.
Pepe's
I mean,
like...
it's...
Pepe on the chat is like, the real gold is the message of family. Bringing everyone together.
But, yeah, I mean, basically what I'm just saying is, it's possible, and I think it's probably something you should consider at least, even if it may not, I may be completely off track, that the gold is just figurative. I don't know what it's figurative for, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the gold is actual, physical, literal AU gold,
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a lot of the
So-
epitaph, like, you can't just take it at face value. You need to consider,
Yeah, exactly.
like, what the words could mean in different contexts, and, like, what the author was trying to convey. And, yeah. Because we know that the epitaphs were the basis of the murder. Like, we have the Twilights following the epitaph, which is particularly interesting. So, yeah, I guess we're getting right into the mystery. We're just going to take a quick break to have a little spot of tea. If you'd like, you can come back in a minute and we'll be ready for you to discuss the first Twilight. So, see you then, guys.
Bye.
Did you guys know if you're single and don't care, you can drink straight applesauce just right from the container? Fantastic.
Why?
Actually, it's surprisingly refreshing, and also I'm very lonely. Please send someone.
And welcome back to the Umineko Tea Party podcast, everyone.
Oh boy.
Obviously, applesauce is the tea of choice of witches.
Very good tea.
So what is everyone's drink of choice today?
Wacky
having-
yerba mate.
I am drinking Melbourne breakfast, whatever that is.
Melbourne breakfast.
Yeah.
Oh, you Aussies.
I'm drinking ice cold Coca-Cola.
God damn it.
I've heard of that tea before. I hear it sounds tasty.
It's an interesting blend. What's in it?
Anyway, now then, I'd like to get involved in the real core mysteries of Umineko. Jumping off that topic. So I want to talk about the first Twilight. Let's start with that. We'll be going through different Twilights, as it's kind of it's a nice point of reference if you want to talk about the specific murder mysteries. So first Twilight, we have the 6 in the storehouse, all killed with their faces mutilated. Let's talk about this for a while.
So for the first Twilight, we end up with 6 people murdered. We have Kraus, Rosa, Shannon, unfortunately. Goda, not as unfortunately. And, yeah, a couple of other people.
Oh dear.
I apologize, I have, a bunch of notes open, and I'm having trouble navigating.
We know that feeling, don't worry.
I don't really have much to say about this one myself. I am more interested in what happened after this Twilight took place.
Because it all happened in the middle of the night, so I feel like there's ample opportunity for anybody.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's important to note here is that it's stated that blood was found, later on in the dining room, so it's implied that something took place there. And then the 6 bodies all had to be moved from wherever they were all murdered at into the storehouse. And it's also important to note that some of the faces were completely mutilated and nothing was recognizable beyond just the clothes on the bodies. While other faces were only half mutilated.
Yes, that's right.
So, this does give room for certain corpse swapping tricks that could occur later on. Which, I think is an important thing to note. It's important to note which faces were still present so that you could identify the bodies as belonging to whoever. and which
Yes.
ones weren't.
Mm-hmm.
And it also sort of indicates that possibly the killer has a plan for how everything's going to go down.
I hope Beatrice has a plan for me.
Just because, I mean, if they're doing this and anticipating swapping corpses somewhere in there, they have an idea of how they're going to sort of kill and pick off everyone. At least in some sense.
And I think that theme of there being some sort of plan is kind of present throughout the story, or at least throughout this chapter or episode.
It's not just all ad-lib sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And
So-
I think that's especially, like, you need to consider the fact that the storehouse was painted with that red paint, maybe blood, I don't know, something that looks like blood. And that's obviously there to draw attention to the fact that, hey, these people have all been killed. It's like, it's not like someone's trying to commit these murders in secret. They're like, they want people to see it.
Yeah. So that does remind me that since that was there, a large portion of the remaining cast did go to the storehouse, but there are also people who we don't have any account of, and maybe they were waiting for that, for something else later on, potentially. So there is that, and then at around that time, I think Kinzo was still in his study.
Well, okay. Possibly. We see right before this point, Natsuhi meets him in his room. The next time they go into his room, he's missing.
Mm-hmm.
So, we don't know when he disappeared, but at some point between those two times, maybe, he disappeared. There's a little... Anyway,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I'm hearing it.
So I think that the magic circle that was drawn onto the storehouse's door was a signal not just to get people there, but possibly a signal to someone else, a cue, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have
Yeah.
anything other than that, at least not until we get further along in the discussion.
Okay, fair enough. I think it's like a good starting point for the story, but as far as like mysteries are concerned, I think the later ones are where things start to get interesting.
Without going too much into the other Twilights, because we'll address them as we go, but it is definitely... This Twilight is very open, and it's hard to say anything about it, and they kind of close... No, not really. What's the word? They kind of become tighter as they go on, and it's harder to find an answer as each one happens. Whereas this
Yeah,
one
definitely.
specifically is
Yeah.
just to set off the chain of events.
Yeah, exactly.
On the other hand, the later mysteries are much more useful in determining who could have done it, because they are so much tighter. So you have to narrow down the list of suspects quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There were a few things that sort of did stand out to me from this mystery. One of which was the killer had to, well, supposedly the storehouse was found locked, and in order to lock the storehouse, the killer has to be on the outside of the building. So there isn't anyone hiding in the building, in the storehouse, after the bodies have been moved in there. That's, as far as we can tell, impossible. Does everyone agree with that, or does anyone have any
That seems
objection?
pretty valid.
Yeah.
I agree, but at the same time, I don't think that we were given very firm confirmation either.
I think Shannon says that in the Tea Party. She says that it's padlocked and can only be padlocked from the outside.
Yeah, but I mean, there could be another way out of the storehouse.
I think
Maybe.
it's much more likely that if we're assuming there is like someone in there alive and they wanted to get out, they'd need someone on the outside to let them out. Like, you could just smash the padlock, you could pick it. There's a number of different ways that don't require a key. And no one was there to confirm whether that crime scene was kept intact after the murder happened. They just never go back to it, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I mean, you
like
can...
never even looked at again.
I mean, you could go back to it. That is true. And let someone out. But in that case, you're talking about two murderers, or at least, a murderer and an accomplice or something like that. So, yeah, there's that. There's also the fact that, okay, so assuming that some of the people's faces were smashed in the dining room, where we see all that blood that Kumasawa found. There isn't any kind of blood trail of anyone picking them up and, just physically carrying them over.
That is true.
So,
yeah.
Well,
they would have had to have some kind of device to do that. One option is the wheelbarrow that we see Canon using before, and we never see that again. Possibly because it's stained with blood. I don't know. So, it in terms of, I think they were saying before that physically carrying that many people. I think Ava was saying that carrying that many people would have required more people, and she's suspecting all of the servants for that. It wouldn't have required that many people. It may have just only required one person if all they were using was a wheelbarrow. So we can't narrow down anyone in terms of just physical strength.
But there's also, like, the murders themselves.
Now, I want to say that I don't think that they were necessarily bludgeoned in the dining room. The story did make a point of showing that there wasn't as much blood as there was in the storehouse. So I would imagine that they were killed with some other method and then moved over, or maybe put to sleep and then moved over to the storehouse, where they were then bludgeoned for the purpose of whatever trick they may have been setting up.
That's definitely possible.
Yeah. We got a lot of different possibilities there.
Yeah, I've been racking my brains trying to figure out how, if they weren't bludgeoned, how else they could have been killed, and I'm coming up with very little. The best I can say is somehow poison or maybe asphyxiation. And neither one of those... I mean, poison doesn't sound impossible, but it seems unlikely that Shannon and Goda could have been poisoned necessarily. I mean, they could have possibly just been picked off by themselves and bludgeoned to death. But we don't see blood anywhere else in the mansion. Yeah.
Another thing about this... Sorry, go on.
No, I was finished what I was saying. Go ahead.
Another thing about this particular Twilight is that someone did go to Natsuhi's room and made a show of trying to get in.
Yes. That's like the supplement of the mystery that they didn't really talk about that much, but it's a thing.
Yeah, so I would imagine that whoever did that had to have been aware that there was the scorpion charm that she received.
Ah, yeah.
I don't know if they were directly aware or if they were indirectly aware, though. So I think that might be something that's important to note. And also, there was a tendency for Kinzo to use Canon or another servant to spy on the other people. Because you would have these scenes where everybody was in the room alone, or so they thought, and then Canon would just show up in Kinzo's office and start explaining what was going on. even though there is no mention of him in areas. So I think that might be something that's also important to keep in mind when trying to figure out how someone might have gotten information about something.
That is a very interesting point. Thanks for bringing that up, that whole, like, Kinzo spying on everyone thing. That's kind of, like, important.
Yeah, and Kennen seems to pop out of nowhere a few times, actually.
He's a bit of a ninja.
Yeah, he just sort of is like, oh, hello, I'm here now, and
He just blends in with the furniture.
Yeah, this just in. He actually is furniture.
I am just a furniture.
I am just a couch. Do not mind me.
that
I was sitting on Kennen?
Okay. That was actually, not to try and derail the discussion going on about the mystery, but the whole thing about him being furniture, that felt like there was some more meaning than just the servants not being really visible or being thought of very much, you know?
Yeah.
It
And
seemed like there was more to that.
Yeah, and it wasn't just him,
Genji
it was
says it as well.
Shannon and Genji too. They all kind of acknowledged it, but other servants like Kumasawa and Goda didn't really make any comment on that. So that kind of caught my interest as well in the potential for a dynamic there. But I digress.
And Kennen seems to say it a lot more than either of them. I remember Genji saying it once, and Shannon saying it, I think, once, maybe twice, I can't remember. But Kennen says it a lot.
Kennen has a huge furniture complex.
He identifies as a furniture.
Okay, someone make a Kennen Tumblr. It's just like,
Furniture kid.
Self-identifies as furniture.
Gender couch.
I am Sofa Kin.
Yeah, I was just thinking like tablekin.
Okay, back on topic.
Back on topic.
Sorry.
Dan, this is all really good discussion, but we need to keep moving. Like, we can't be stuck on this forever, and we're going to go over 2 hours as it is, but let's try to not make it too far. All right, let's move on. One thing I want to draw attention to is the scene with the servants in the kitchen, I guess it was.
Oh yeah, the creepy scene.
The creepy scene.
Where Maria comes in and everyone's like, Beatrice exists, in quotes. Yeah, that thing. That was great. I love that scene.
Yeah. And they're all just staring at the space behind him, and he's freaking out.
I did read the manga for the first episode, and that scene in the manga was amazing. It's really good. So, I mean, if you're listening to the podcast, go read the manga for the first episode.
Oh yeah, I absolutely recommend that. Like,
so good.
One thing I often recommend to people reading Umineko is save the manga for when you want to do a reread, because you will want to do a reread. There's going to be points in the story where it's like, you should go back and like think about this again. And the manga is the best opportunity you have to do that, because it bridges the story so it's a lot smoother and quicker, but it still has just as much rich content as the visual novel. It's like a really good adaptation. So if you ever find yourself wanting to go back and look at like the mysteries again, and think of things from a different angle, use the manga. That's like your best tool there. So I'd recommend saving it for now, personally, but definitely keep it in mind. Anyway, just that little advertisement out of the way. Yeah, Rabbler, what do you think of this scene?
I'm actually blanking on this scene.
Not Kyon, what do you think of this scene?
I thought it was rather interesting because it would seem odd that all of the servants were looking at the space behind Battler, and I'm not sure if that was something where, you know, like I brought up earlier, if that was something where I had to question his sanity or not, if he was just had a persecution sort of complex, was just on edge and paranoid.
This is definitely the most Higurashi scene of Umineko.
That's what I thought as well.
I remember the scene now.
So it was an interesting scene, and I feel like it's important, but I can't make any connections just yet as to why all of the servants would look behind him.
Let's not focus so much on that, but let's focus on the fact that they're all going together with this story that Beatrice exists. I think that's especially significant.
It is very possible that they are just going along with Maria so that they don't upset her. I don't particularly like it because it seems like they're saying it before Maria gets there, but we're not really sure when Maria gets there.
She just kind of turns up, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And if we accept Genji's story from way earlier, sorry, not way earlier, way later, when he's talking about Beatrice as being Kinzo's sort of side chick, then it's possible that they're all saying Beatrice exists in that sense, like she existed. She's someone who has actually lived, and
You've drawn attention to a very important question, and that is, what does it mean for Beatrice to exist? Does that mean in a metaphysical sense of there's some sort of spiritual being that has power over the island? Or does it mean there's a person that physically exists with the name Beatrice? Does it mean someone else is pretending to be Beatrice? Does it mean Beatrice used to exist but doesn't anymore? Or is she just a fictional character that everyone buys into? There's so many ways you can interpret the existence of Beatrice, and it leaves it really open to interpretation.
Can I go D, all of the above?
I don't know if you could do that. I don't know. Elaborate.
Okay. Well, let's see. I'm trying to collect my thoughts.
You don't have to.
I'm trying to put forward theories, just spitballing and sort of shotgunning theories at everyone.
That's what I want.
I've made a post in the forums about what it means for Beatrice to exist, and it basically, to sort of sum it all up, said that she exists sort of, like you said, in kind of a metaphysical sense. She's sort of outside of the realm that we would normally see.
Mm-hmm.
However, that doesn't necessarily mean that she doesn't actually exist.
Well, yeah, let's that's a good point here. We're jumping ahead a bit, but we need to consider the Tea Party here. There is a character with a sprite called Beatrice who appears in the Tea Party, so
yeah, there's
fundamentally she exists in some form.
There is 100% a character called Beatrice who appears in the game.
Yeah. So we cannot deny that. But taking that into consideration, continue. Sarah.
So in some sense she exists. However, the whole, quotation marks and everything around her existing makes me think, and also because I feel like it is possible for us to explain the mysteries that happened without resorting to a witch. I feel like she doesn't physically exist as the witch Beatrice, but it may be that someone acting as Beatrice is as good as Beatrice physically existing, if that makes any sense.
Is it a 19th person or is it one of the 18? That's another question.
Yeah, one of the 18 sort of laying claim to the title Beatrice, maybe. I don't know.
I like to view it more as Beatrice existing as a concept of sorts. At least as far as the mystery is concerned. So I think that would line up with one of the 18 people being Beatrice, or taking on the role of Beatrice.
Mm-hmm. I like that little math Battler does of Beatrice exists in the integer between the integers of 18 and 19.
Yeah.
She cannot be represented as an integer.
Yeah.
It's a weird logic, but it's an interesting way to think of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so that's pretty good. I guess we'll continue on to the second Twilight now. Now, I really like this Twilight. This is like a very, very tight closed room murder mystery, and it's pretty tricky.
This is the de facto, how do you explain this without magic one. This is like the biggest part.
This is the one that Battler had the most trouble with too, when he was trying to explain shit to the Beatrice character. So, what do you think? Who wants to take the reign?
Okay, so on this second Twilight, we have Eva and Hideyoshi dying in this locked room that they created. They locked the door, and they put the chain on. And when we find them next, the door is basically smashed open. And Eva is on the bed, while Hideyoshi is in a bathroom in a separate room. So the question is, how did they die? Well, how did the killer kill them? We find some spiky objects, later on referred to as demon's blades, in Ava's head and in Hideyoshi's.
Yeah, the 7 stakes of purgatory.
Yeah, that was in the tips, wasn't it?
Specifically, Ava was pierced by the stake of Asmodeus, and Hideyoshi was pierced by the stake of Beelzebub.
Well,
yeah. If you're not sure where this came from, if you check the tips after you finish the episode, there's lots of like bonus little shit, and it has a thing on the 7 stakes of purgatory there.
Wow.
And the credits roll of all the deaths and what happened is also listed in the tips menu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, that little side note.
Continue.
So, I guess all I really have to say about this is you can take almost any number of standard locked room mysteries and apply it here. It just really depends on who would have had the opportunity to do it. So, for example, with the door being locked, there are 2 things. There's the lock on the doorknob itself, and then there's the chain. With the lock on the doorknob, there's a somewhat standard trick where you could shove, for example, a receipt or some other piece of paper wadded up into the slot that the lock would go into, and it would prevent the door from properly locking, allowing someone to gain entrance. And then you have the problem of the chain. While Ava did state that she would lock the room with a chain to the family, it's not explicitly mentioned whether she did put the chain up or not. Which
that is true.
I'll say that she did, just for argument's sake. But there are any number of ways to get in with the chain up, including just actually cutting the chain and then replacing it after the murder. It wouldn't take that long to replace it if somebody did have the time to do so. Although, I will say, I'm not too keen on that route. So I don't have a more elegant solution than replacing the chain after you broke in. But in exiting, it is possible to put the chain on the door as you exit the room, and there are a number of other locked room mysteries where that is a factor.
Go ahead, Rafa.
I know from personal experience it's hard to lock that chain from the outside. Like, the idea of replacing the chain would still require someone to be outside the door when the new chain was put on. And I'm aware it's quite hard to actually get the chain into the lock, because I've tried that before.
Impossible, but maybe improbable. I don't know. It feels
That's
like that's a really cheap way to get out of a chain,
Yeah.
a locked chain. Like, just like, oh, you did it from the outside. It's like, fuck you. I would really be pissed off at Ryukishi if that was the answer.
Yeah,
And There's also the issue. Okay, so say you are the killer and you're outside the room and you want to get in. Okay, so you cut the chain. Both Ava and Hideyoshi hear that. You can't do that silently.
Yeah, we saw from them cutting the chain how involved it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and we know Ava is like a martial arts expert. How do you manage to kill and subdue Ava from like? Okay, it's possible that they had some kind of weapon that could kill her from a distance, and that's fair enough. But there aren't signs of a struggle in there necessarily. She's just dead on her bed.
Yeah.
So it seems likely that it was some kind of sneak attack. She may have been napping, which is possible. The time is around about 8 o'clock, I think, at night. Not exactly the ideal time, nor are Eva and Hideyoshi really in the right, I guess, state to be napping. I mean, their siblings have all been murdered. I would find it pretty hard to nap if that was happening. Just as, yeah, it seems like it was a sneak attack in some way, and it doesn't seem terribly likely that a killer could have entered from outside without being met with some resistance.
Yeah. There's a few things, like, what about poison?
A little bit. How?
The problem with poison, though, is that it would affect each person differently. I'm sure that Ryukishi would be aware of that, so there's no guarantee that it would happen, and take effect within an appropriate time frame.
Yeah, poison isn't really a good method of delivering an instant death. That's valid.
But there could have been something else, some other sort of trick. For example, some sort of sleeping aid, but that has the same problem as poison, where it wouldn't necessarily take effect, and some people just aren't affected by it at all, so...
And you still have the problem of trying to get the stake into her forehead.
Yes, that is a big problem, because, like, doing that with human strength would be incredibly difficult.
I think that there was some sort of tool involved. It doesn't necessarily have to be a long-range one, but
yeah,
I think that's probably the case. Now, as for getting into the locked room to begin with, another interesting possibility might be that someone was in the room to begin with. For example...
Hey!
Sarah,
that was my theory. No. Nakion brought it up. Nakion, go ahead. Run with it.
Well, I was just going to say that at that time, we don't know where Kinzo was. He was missing.
Yes, Kinzo had disappeared by this point, yes.
I told you he's useful. He's a wild
So
card.
that's all. That is all I really had to say about that. Sorry if you had more to add.
I remember someone bringing that up. Is this the one where it's implied they were hidden in the bathroom, killed Hideyoshi first?
Yeah, started in the bathroom, killed Hideyoshi, then killed Ava, like, sneakily, and then waited in the room for someone to come around and check on them, see if they were still okay. When there was no response, the killer can then wait for them to leave to get something to open up the chain. They then can open the door, quickly paint on the magic circle, close the door, hide in the room again, wait for everyone to come in. Everyone's going to be like, "Oh my gosh, someone died in here. We have to make sure that the crime scene is preserved." So they don't thoroughly check the room. They don't like root through everything to check the room. And then once they leave, the killer is free to leave because they have an easy escape at that point.
Yeah.
It is really strange that someone was able to paint on that huge thing on the door in such a short time frame.
Which is
Yeah.
what led me to believe that the killer was very close by at that point.
Yeah.
Plus, they had to have all of the supplies necessary to do it, which is... That seems like they need to carry a lot with them. You know, at least relatively.
So
They
it's
would
hidden
appear
in the
bulky.
room.
Yeah. And nobody
Yeah.
seemed to look for anything of the sort, any sort of tool for drawing on the magic circles.
They're not
later
great.
on
They're not great
earlier.
detectives. Let's be honest.
They're just people.
Gosh darn it, Battlelord, search the room a little bit.
Yeah.
I do want to note that after the bodies were discovered, that George ran over and physically hit the bed several times, and it was, you know, there was a point made in the story to emphasize that he had done that. So take whatever meaning from that you will.
Yeah.
All right.
It's,
So next Twilight.
This one seems, I mean, as far... Considering Battler had the hardest time solving it, this one actually seems relatively solvable. I don't know. Maybe that's just the impression I get. What do you guys think?
I personally think
think
it is
so.
the hardest one to directly imply a solution to.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's you can make a lot of reasonable guesses for the other Twilights, but it's very closed, and there's very limited ways I think this one could
I
have
think-
adequately been done.
I think this is a very interesting illustration of how being backed into a corner makes something seem much more solvable. Because, like, you have the first few murders which are completely open and anyone could have done it. But that's exactly the thing. Like, it's... anybody could have done it, therefore, you know... Maybe we can't come up with a specific answer, but we can think of an entire... like, heaps of ways where it's entirely possible for a non-witch to have done it, for a human culprit to have done it. In this particular case, though, we're backed into a corner, and that limits our suspects. It limits our moves. It's very similar to this chessboard thinking they have, where, like, if an opponent is cornered into check, which would be us in this case with this murder, there's only a limited number of moves we can make. But that's also the time where, you know, because we have a limited number of moves, we know that one of them must be the answer. And that's sort of like, it can give us a bit of a confidence boost knowing that, hey, this mystery has only a certain number of possibilities, therefore the answer is just within reach. It's kind of like an interesting way of thinking about it, but
Yeah.
that in that sense, it becomes much more solvable. In the sense of, like, it may seem daunting, but it gives us more hints than any of the other murders. You know what I mean?
And yeah, that is part of it, because for the first Twilight, we're given quite a lot of time to process and time to consider everything and all of the suspects and, you know, how it might have been done. And, you know, you're given a lot of time to think about it. For the second one, you're not given quite as much time, but as the Twilights progress, you're given less and less time to think about all of them. They just start happening one after another, and the mysteries keep, like, piling up without giving you time to really ponder them and consider them. I find that the second Twilight gives you somewhere in between. Like, you have some time to think about it, you're given some detail, and you're given something that seems pretty, limiting. Like, it's not just super open like the first one. You're given something that doesn't have just an infinite number of solutions.
Yeah, exactly.
So I really like the second Twilight in that respect.
Yeah. So, I think our podcast is going to follow a similar dynamic of Umineko episode 1, where we're going to have to get through these Twilights a lot quicker because we're running out of time. Guys, 4th and 5th Twilights, canon in the boiler room and the corpse in the boiler room. Let's go. You got 10 minutes.
So canon this is the first time they directly confront the culprit.
Yeah,
Or at least it's implied that happens.
yeah, we hear like
Yeah.
a door opening and
Kennen
Is it?
declares his resolve because of the issue with Shannon having been taken.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
And the 0 on the roulette. Can has like the most badass scene in this game. And then he dies. Rip.
yeah,
Sorry, Kenny. You were a bro.
This is where they start getting a bit more difficult, because as far as I'm aware, unless we're going to pull the idea that because this scene is not focused on Battler, the narration is unreliable, every character's location is accounted for during Cannon's death.
Yeah,
And they make
they,
a serious
they-
point of that.
almost, but not quite, because
Except Kinza.
as we brought up, yes.
yeah.
Although, they imply that they state that the body in the boiler is Kinzo's because he has 6 toes, he has the whatever on him, the key. And Fand is missing a ring, just like Kinzo was. So, that's kind of stated, but then later on, it starts emphasizing more that, well, the 6-toe thing is hereditary, and by the way, not that rare. So, it kind of lends to the idea that maybe someone from the storeroom was taken in place there instead of Kinzo. At least that's my interpretation of it.
Mhm.
I'm sure that it's possibly wrong. But
It's possible.
there is that. Other than
And-
that, it could have. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, no. I was just saying, and the key itself, I don't think is ever really confirmed to be the key to Kinzo's study.
Yeah,
Does Genji not confirm that?
Genji
I-
states it, but is he reliable?
Oh, okay, true.
And also, would Genji even really know? Like, I mean, he deals with so many keys. Is he able to just identify a key just by looking at it right away?
Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
say.
Well, see,
so.
I'd say
Kinzo's-
he could.
Kinzo's study is pretty it's a pretty special door. I think an equally special key would be quite believable.
Genji is the servant. He is the most reliable. He's the most trusted. I think it'd be very, very believable that if Genji could identify that key as a specific key, I would be willing to believe that. But then again,
Genji-
he could be working for Kinzo.
Genji is an excellent set piece because what we have with him is his most defining characteristic is his unfaltering loyalty to his master. And that's such a big thing with Genji. It's just like he won't betray his master Kinzo. And so if we were to suspect Kinzo of foul play, then we have to suspect
just suspect Genji.
Yeah, and then we can't trust anything Genji says. So it all depends. Like, do you suspect Kinzo or not?
He is either the most trustable character or the least.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's such an interesting role to play, and it adds so much to the mystery. I love it. Yeah, just throwing that out there. Just one thing I want to draw attention to. You mentioned something about Cannon's perspective being unreliable. Notco?
I
And
didn't say that.
I said that.
oh, so it's Rabla. My bad. But yeah, you said that it's unreliable perspective. Is the reason you're saying that perhaps because of the butterflies?
That is part of it. But I think, as a general state of mind, when I played, I kept it in mind to not entirely believe anything that Battler was not directly seen.
Why is that?
Because the game still wanted me to believe that Battler was the lead.
So basically, this is a case of just trusting the detective, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
But no, yeah, that is one of, I think that might even be the first instance of blatant on-screen magic.
There was a little thing where, like, Shannon was in the mansion and she thinks she sees, like, a golden butterfly.
Oh yeah, Shannon follows the butterflies, and then her next scene is she's found dead. But this
Yeah.
is the first big spectacle.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, also that Shannon and Cannon are relatively related as characters. That they're both servants with the on name from the one orphanage. So I think that's
Fukuin?
if there is
Fukuin,
yes.
you remembered it, yes.
I think that if there is something more to that we could say that it's only really those servants that ever see the butterflies, and that might have some significance.
It does also bring into question, like we talked about before with the scene in the kitchen, where maybe some characters can see stuff that others can't.
Yeah, the wavelengths argument. But that at that point, you're just believing in Beatrice, aren't you?
Yeah.
Don't do it, Rabula. No.
Magic's bullshit.
Come back.
But no, yeah, I just instinctively doubt that scene's reliability because of the prominence of magic in the scene.
Could be holograms, right?
Do you think Kinzo
1986.
wouldn't allow something so fancy in his house?
Oh no, but
I
like
mean, they are rich.
Kraus
Yeah.
wanted to make a theme park, and like maybe that was one of his attractions, just holograms. And there you go.
But then somehow Kennen got stabbed by a hologram, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
That is
yeah,
really
pretty impressive.
There,
Yeah, Cannon gets stabbed. Almost. We're led to believe maybe he'll survive, but he doesn't.
He pulls it out though.
Yeah, and then
He does.
because he's badass like that.
then we find
Yes.
then we find maybe Kinzo, and that's that scene.
Yeah.
Can I say something? It is sort of interesting that Cannon's death is probably the one we can pinpoint the time of best. Everyone else's
Yeah.
death seems kind of, because Eva and Hideyoshi occur sometime in between them leaving and dinner. So I think it was about 2 hours or so.
It was a couple of hours.
And of course, the first Twilight happened, who knows when. And then the corpse that's found in the furnace, the fire is pretty low.
Yeah, it's implied to be there a while.
Yeah, it's been there for a while, supposedly. And then for the final murders,
There's also the stench of the corpse. Don't forget.
Yeah. For the final murders, there's I think about an hour or more, where we don't know when they were killed. But Cannon seems to have a pretty definite time of death.
Yeah.
At least
Yeah,
for
I
when
think-
he was attacked. Yeah.
I think there's it must be minutes between the stabbing and when we walk in.
Because Kumasawa's there with
Possibly.
Cannon, and like Cannon's like, I'm running ahead, and then that happens.
That's all I've got on those ones.
Yeah, it's cool. It's a very exciting scene. I really like that one. And then we move on to the 6th, 7th, and 8th Twilights. I mean, like, we could talk a little bit about the letter if you want, but that's like, there's one of 5 people that could have done that, I reckon. Unless, like, there's some sort of trick involved. I don't know. I think that...
The one that pops up in the study.
Yeah.
Yeah, which forces the group to split in
No.
half.
Goodness, I
think
sat
when
there
I was-
forever trying to think of.
When I was reading
Think of
that,
how
I'm
to
just
say
like... I'm looking at, like, Battler is like, there's only 4 people that could have done it. And then, like, but what if Natsuhi did it? Like...
Yeah.
She's a possible candidate, but she's holding a gun, so you probably wouldn't say that to her face.
Yeah, Natsuki might have just used it as a ploy to get people out of the room.
Yeah.
Plus,
I was annoyed how they didn't acknowledge that possibility, basically.
But I mean, what motive would she have had for getting the people out of the room?
To protect the children.
Yeah.
But
But then why even let them into the room? Why go to all the bother of having the letter in the first place? Plus, how would she have known that they were going to go into Kinzo's study and be able to write the letter specifically to split up the group? She wouldn't have had time in between going to the study and doing that.
Yeah, there's
Also, yeah, on top of that, I also don't think Natsuhi would be aware of the meaning behind the magic circle that was included with the letter.
Plus, she did get the other letter later on, so it does seem odd that she would have been the one to place it.
I really
wanna-
I want to trust Natsuhi because I like her a lot. Like, of all the adults, she's probably one of the most sincere.
I do want to say that, for my own theory, I do think that Genji is the one who placed the letter.
Yeah?
But, yeah. Just because so far, throughout the story, we see Genji having had ample opportunity to do all of these things, and if we consider the idea of him collaborating with Kinzo, it would have been possible for all of these. I kind of outlined that in my forum post earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I do wonder what, like, it's really hard to predict Genji if we do assume that Kinzo is dead. Because then is he like, okay, let's assume that Kinzo is the perpetrator here. Do we have a situation there where Kinzo's dead, therefore I have to continue his plan after his death?
I'd assume that's believable. Genji
But then-
is very faithful and is at least very much aware of the ritual.
That is true.
And it did
That is
show-
true.
But then, how on
And it
earth
did
did
show
Kinzo
loyalty.
die?
Yeah, it's too open. Like, there's really nothing that can go on there.
I wouldn't say that Kinzo is dead, though. But even if he did die,
Yeah, I know you don't
I
think
would
he's
say-
dead.
but even if he did die, Genji did show loyalty to him even after that, even after he saw him be dead. So I think it would be reasonable
Yeah.
if he were continuing it on.
Because then there's, like, scenes where, like, Ava's like, as the new head of the family, I demand you to tell me the truth. And it's like, I'm just wondering, is Genji buying that? Or is he, like, still like, yeah, I'm Kinzo. Kinzo for life.
Team Kinzo.
So, yeah, I don't know if it's truly trustworthy if, like, he's, like, saying that and, like, Kinzo's, like, told him to hush-hush about something. Like, I don't think he would, like, deny that even after his death. But then there is a whole thing about, like, contradicting that, there is a whole thing about Genji mentioning Beatrice as Kinzo's mistress, and that's like, if that is true, then you'd think that's something Kinzo wouldn't want known, and kind of like, probably his greatest sin against his master. But,
Unless it was a lie that Genji was.
fabricated,
Yeah, he could have been told to feed that lie if someone got maybe a little too curious about it. I don't know.
That's
If
possible,
you-
yeah.
It does feel like, I mean, on the one hand, you're pretty suspicious of just about everything at this point, which I think you're meant to be. But it feels like a pretty genuine revelation, you know? Like, on the one hand, you're thinking, there's no way this is real. But if it had been told to you earlier, then you might be a lot more open to it, I feel.
I don't know.
So it feels like, I don't know, I kind of want to believe that Genji is telling at least a small portion of the truth in his story. Maybe not the whole truth, but I feel like there's something in what he says that is actually true, and that might happen, like that might be revealed perhaps in later episodes, but I think that there's something there that's important for us to take away.
Yeah, there's important things to take away from every scene, man. Yeah. But, okay, moving on to the final set of Twilights, the 6th, 7th, and 8th. Just a quick talk about this, like, who do you think could have done it? Because everyone's in the study.
Not Natsuhi, so she's clear. Woohoo!
Yeah, it's pretty
And
impossible for Natsuki to do it.
In my own theory, I would have it placed as Genji or an accomplice, because, and I do feel like this is an important point, whether it's actually used or not in the story. the victims here were like the victims in the storehouse, where you could only identify them by their clothes. So, since nobody did go and check the storehouse, at least in this episode after the events, any of the bodies could have been taken and reused. And some of them have some pretty common builds, so
Yeah.
there is that.
But one thing that I think is really interesting here is the fact that Maria mentions that Beatrice entered the room and told her to sing a song, and then killed everyone, supposedly, when her back was turned. So, is Maria lying about that? Or is there someone who really did, like, bear the resemblance of Beatrice that came into the room?
But the thing about that, too, is if Beatrice exists as a concept, then it could merely be that someone went to her and claimed to have had their body taken over by Beatrice. Or maybe she found a message that stated that she needed to do that, and in some way you could interpret the message having entered the room as Beatrice having entered the room, or any of those sorts of things. But I don't think that there's really enough to go on to give any of those theories any weight.
Yeah, it's hard to trust a lot of what Maria directly says, and well, obviously there's literally no one else in the room at that point, so it's unclear.
Unless they're invisible or something.
I did make the point on in a forum post that Beatrice seems like she doesn't want Maria to hear something. I wasn't sure if... I'm not sure if I'm onto anything with that, but if there is a clue about how these people were really murdered, that might be some kind of clue. I don't know.
It is interesting that specifically Beatrice, quote-unquote Beatrice, does not want her to hear something specifically, and it's like, well, what killing methods could be very well associated with a noise? Like, is it a gunshot?
I mean, I imagine she would have heard a gun, though.
Yeah.
All things considered.
It's a little... I mean, because we never really find out any kind of method of death for any of the people who have their faces smashed, it's very, very difficult to make any kind of conclusions off of what we see. There doesn't seem to be anything that even smashes their faces, really. We're never shown any kind of bloody, I don't know, lead pipe or wrench or hammer or something like that. So, it's... Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my reaction to a lot of these. Yeah.
Alright.
And then, just for completeness sake, someone did have to place the phone call, which means that the phones ended up going back online. So that's probably an important aspect, although I'd imagine that it's obvious.
Yeah,
I would imagine that the reason for that is obvious, though.
The fact that not only do the phones go down at inopportune times, but come back as soon as they're needed for the murder, would heavily imply that it is someone familiar with the wiring of the house.
I think I made a point at one of the posts that I had about Canon already not so he already seemed to know that the phones wouldn't work earlier, or at the very least he goes to the guest house when it I think even Badler comments or thinks in his mind about how Canon didn't use the phones to contact them, to tell them to come to dinner. Instead, he goes out into the rain to do it.
Oh, yeah.
It does sort of make... I don't know. Canon sort of has a few little points here and there that I think are mildly suspicious. But I don't know. It's pretty hard to argue with him dying, so I don't know if you could really say that he could fake that death in any way.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. But it's possible that he may have figured out in some other way, and so it's not actually a point of suspicion. But I don't know. Just something to consider.
Yeah, interesting. I guess we'll talk quickly about the final scene where Natsuhi confronts supposedly Beatrice in the lobby? The foyer? The foyer.
The entrance hall.
Yeah, the entrance hall. So, that happened.
I think Rattler would like to take this one.
And everything that happened after that, it's just, what? Like, we
Yeah.
heard a gunshot, we heard a gun go off. That's like the first time we actually heard a gunshot, interestingly enough. And only one shot, but for some reason, Natsuhi's dead?
I did read and quite like a theory that the shotgun is rigged because Kinzo is so obsessed with the gun.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I had theorized that might have been the case, and she did grab it from wherever Kinzo had it hidden.
Yeah, I was like,
But-
Kinzo really wanted this gun and he's been playing with it for ages. I do like the idea that maybe Kinzo had created this trap gun.
I did really like that Nakion. That was a good idea.
There's enough evidence to support that, so yeah. I'd say that's probably valid.
But then, why? So, that I don't have answered.
And when would he have rigged it to do that?
I wouldn't put it past grandfather.
Crazy old man.
And then we have the final scene at the end where shit just gets crazy, and there's butterflies, and then Beatrice actually appears.
Well, no, she does not actively appear on the screen. It is implied there is someone else there.
Yeah, she doesn't. We don't see her sprite, but we see like Battler reacting. It's like, are you serious? Is this really happening?
We cannot say for a certainty that it is Beatrice.
Didn't they say that Maria like ran up to her?
It could be someone else disguised as Beatrice, like the other agents.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm saying this as not that there wasn't a Beatrice there. I'm saying you cannot verify that it is the Beatrice.
This whole scene does get into that sort of like questionable territory where like it just ends abruptly, and then we cut to the credits. So
Like, oh, well, everybody died. Where do we go
Yeah,
from here?
it's kind of like, oh, okay, what's going to happen now? Oh, it's over.
yeah.
And then you have to wait through the credits to see the game results,
Yeah.
and you find out what happened to the remaining four.
Mm-hmm.
Which I do have here.
Yeah, bring it up.
George, Jessica, Maria, missing on the 10th Twilight. It is directly written in the game results that these three acknowledged the existence of the witch, and they were invited to the Golden Land. Whereas Battler is also listed as missing, but it is unclear whether he will be invited or not.
We don't know if we want to invite Battler. I don't know.
That guy's a bit of a spoil sport.
Kind of a privilege.
Which we do see in the Tea Party.
Yeah.
Yeah, just before cutting ahead to that, what do you guys think of the like end scroll?
I liked it.
It's full of interesting tidbits that can definitely seem counterintuitive.
I wish
I
the
did-
entire end scroll, like epilogue story, was here in the tips menu.
Yeah,
That would be nice. I would have appreciated that.
You can skip to it in the chapter select if you
Yeah.
go starting again. But yeah.
There was one thing that was a little unclear that I thought was interesting. So, it says that the police couldn't identify people because, like, they were all cut up. and it doesn't say whether that's just referring to the children or to everybody. And it seems like it very definitely could refer to just everybody. Just everybody has all been sort of butchered and put into one pile so that everyone is unidentifiable. Because, I mean, if you think about it, okay, so say they did reuse a body or something. Eventually, the police, when they arrived, would be able to tell who had been, who had been replaced and everything like that. And so they'd be able to tell who the murderer was. However, if you just cut everyone up so that everyone's body was completely unidentifiable, then the police would have no way of really being able to see, okay, who was the murderer, how did everything happen, when they start looking for clues and doing it properly. So, anyway.
Yeah, I
The
do find it weird
body
that
piece that
they should have been able to do DNA tests to identify people if they did have like the bodies, but they said that only Maria was like identifiable by her jaw.
Yeah, and only her jaw too.
I guess.
There have been many body parts that couldn't be identified as belonging to any specific person. That's weird. I know.
There is also the fact that part of Maria's notebook recounting the tale turns up in a wine bottle.
I do find that interesting.
Actually, was DNA testing like established back then? I don't know.
I don't know. This might predate it.
This might.
Yeah, 1986. That seems a little bit early for at least any kind of widespread use of that.
Yeah, because I did say that the only way they could identify Maria was by dental records. So maybe they didn't have DNA testing back then. Would make sense. Scratch that then.
The only thing I really want to say about the end scroll is that at the end it put an emphasis on Maria as wanting to find out what the mystery of this all was.
Yeah.
And I think that is an important clue in some way, because it shows that she really wasn't aware of what was going on here. At least I think it implies it.
Although there may or may not be a corpse, you who have read this, please find out the truth. That is my only wish.
Mm-hmm. That is, of course, assuming that Maria actually did write.
Yes.
Because
it is hard to identify exactly when Maria would have written the entire story down, put it in a wine bottle, thrown it out to sea.
And also the idea that Maria knows all these kanji and everything that it would have taken to write down as much story as she did.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, kanji is pretty difficult. And at 9, you probably don't know quite enough to... I don't know. I don't want to say that because she does read a letter pretty fluently, which...
She reads Hebrew.
That is
apparently.
Yeah.
Well, she reads Hebrew, she knows it's an active part of a magic circle.
I am skeptical she knows Hebrew. I think more, maybe she's like studied these particular magic circles in detail enough to memorize it, but like not actually read it.
That's what I believe.
Yeah.
I believe she can go, oh, I know that magic circle, and then in her head she's like, this is what that magic circle says.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I don't think she could just read Hebrew. That seems like a stretch to me.
Yeah, and I mean, she obviously knows what the circle is. Like, she has it memorized. No one else can really tell what the writing is, but she already knows what the writing is. She doesn't have to see the circle.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. It also seems like Maria is, like, she's able to... It says she's able to memorize. She has really good powers of memorization. But the memorization seems limited to things that she's interested in.
Like most kids.
Yeah. Like a very narrow field. It doesn't seem like she can just memorize anything. It seems like she can memorize things about the occult, and that's kind of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's lots of like weird shit going on in that end scroll. Have fun dealing with that later. But for now, let's talk about the tea party, which is probably the highlight of the episode for me, because it's just obviously what's going on here is it like completely subverts the whole all cast review sessions of Higurashi.
That was fantastic, by the way.
Because it just starts with, "Hey, thanks for playing Umineko," and then they start talking about what happened in sort of like a almost a meta perspective of like we're characters in a game, and let's like look at what just happened as like, you know, that was just us actors fulfilling our roles.
So it's Battler, George, Jessica, Shannon, and Cannon.
Yeah.
Was Cannon there?
Yep.
And was Maria there?
Yes.
Yeah, Mario.
And they all sit down just like Higurashi does, and they go, "Hey, let's go over our theories," because that's what they do in Higurashi. They go, "Was it magic?" Without going into it, obviously, was it magic or was it a person? And they're all sitting there going, and then this happened, and then well, yeah, that would have had to be magic. That's crazy. And then it just cuts, and Battler goes, "No, no, stop." That's
so
bullshit.
Cool. The music stops, and it's just...
And like the picture goes grey and everything like that. Yeah.
And then Beatrice is there.
But it's loved that...
She's just there. It's like, yeah, I'm Beatrice. Hi, I'm here now.
But even before that, I just love the scene where it's like everyone's just suddenly turning on Battler. And, you know, it's like, isn't it obvious that it's a witch? Like, you're being crazy if you think that, like, why are you saying that it has to be a human without providing evidence? It's sort of like this little game of, like, who actually has the burden of proof here.
Yeah.
What do they refer to it as in the game? It's... I don't think they actually mention it until episode 2, but it's something called the Devil's Proof.
Yes.
Where, to quickly summarize it, it is...
I'll permit
easy.
this.
It is very easy to believe that a devil exists, but impossible to prove it does not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think they do mention it in episode 1. Battler
They might,
just
yeah.
says it once, I think. So you're safe. You're all good.
But yeah, they tried to force the idea of, well, there is. It's easy that I could believe it's a witch, because witches are just magic and they can do anything. Why don't you prove that a human did it? Where's your direct evidence that a human did it?
Yeah. And Battler's like, this is the real world. Like, obviously it wasn't a witch.
Mm-hmm.
Which is such a great perspective to take. Like, this... it really does, like, really draw you into the world of Umineko. It's like, this is the real world. Like, would you really believe a witch could actually do this shit in the real world? And... yeah, it's kind of like the other characters kind of suspending their disbelief. It's like, it's a fantasy story. Of course, it's a witch. It doesn't matter. And Bella's like, no. What are you guys saying? This is the real world.
This isn't a fantasy story.
Yeah, it's a mystery, isn't it? And I really love the narration here because it starts going on about like the foolish Battler questioned the cousins, and it's like it's like
like even the game is against Battler right now.
Yeah.
It's like, how dare you question me, the game?
And then it's like the wise Maria corrected him. It's like, what? What's going on here? It's so like just flips everything on its head at that point. I love it.
Was anyone else like seriously frustrated by Maria at points? Just like
every now and then.
You're just like, oh Maria, please just shut up. I don't want to hear it. Anyway.
I like there's just some times where like just Battler just gets sick of her shit and just like whacks her over the head. It's like, okay, that's enough from you.
That's great. He's like,
I was never too bothered by her, but
she's like, don't you know what this magic circle is? He's like, no, I don't. Tell me what it is.
Battler it was just like no bullshit by the end of the game.
Just something comes up and he's instantly like, Maria, explain. And then she says it. It's like, okay, now shut up. Don't say anything else. That's all I needed.
Pretty much. Gotta love Battler. Oh my god. But yeah, like, going back to Beatrice, she's a thing. She appears before Battler because Battler's saying, well, if Beatrice exists, why doesn't she just appear? And then she does.
Yeah,
It's
why isn't it just right here? Oh.
Wasn't expecting that. Now, I want to see...
I love how he just...
I want to hear you guys' thoughts on this.
Okay, first to clarify, there is no direct, kind of a devil's proof in itself, there is no direct way we can say this scene is a real thing that happens.
Mm-hmm.
It does kind of go out of its way to point out that it's taking place in something called Purgatorio. So, I don't feel like it's something that I should consider as being part of the core mysteries, so I don't think it's something that you should consider when trying to solve it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. But it does seem like something that is still useful, kind of like as a hint-giving mechanism and to kind of engage your thought process. I do want to say about Battler, though, that I do love how he just continues to deny her even though she shows up right in front of him, at least there.
And it's like, Beatrice is like, impressive, you still managed to deny me even though I'm right before you. It's like, you truly are gifted with magic resistance or whatever she calls it.
Battler's looking right at her face and going, you aren't real.
Yeah.
So I really like that part.
I think it is, like, both tea parties are fantastic in context, though. It is a very great subversion of what Higurashi does.
Yeah, it's really hard to take away much from them at this point, though. I mean, I feel like as we go, we'll be able to understand what exactly is going on in both of these tea parties, specifically the second one.
Yeah, because that's just like, what the fuck.
Yeah, the second one. Let's finish talking about the first one.
Yeah. But in terms of, like, I don't know, in terms of their usefulness, I feel like there's something that is useful for solving the mystery in there, but it really seems like whatever that something is buried, and we just don't have the tools to excavate it quite yet. That may just be me being lazy, and being like, oh, I just don't know it yet, so I'm not gonna even bother. There were some things that some of the characters said, though, before Beatrice shows up, that did seem sort of, perhaps a little bit more details that we didn't quite understand or weren't quite made clear in the core mystery.
Yeah, they do. Because Beatrice directly takes them back into the story to explain how she does things.
Yeah.
It's like, well, sure, like, specifically, like we were talking about the second Twilight. It's like, this is how I did it. I used these. I shot them through the door like magic. You explain what you think happened.
Yeah. And just to like little jump in here, this is pretty much setting up for the rest of Umineko. Like, we had the first episode which we saw the entire events of the murders play out, and that was kind of a weird way to end the first episode because everyone's dead. It's like, what? Where do we go from here? And like this tea party's sort of a way of like continuing the story. It's like a sort of to be continued almost, where we have this conflict formed on some distant place where Battler is fighting to prove that Beatrice did not commit the murders and that they were committed by a human. And this is kind of our setup here, which we'll see explored a bit more in future episodes. But yeah, that's my little teaser for you guys, I guess.
It kind of feels almost like, you know, the first episode is sort of what happened. You know, like, okay, so all these people come onto this island. They all, you know, basically all of them die and everything. And then you see sort of Battler being like, okay, well, we all died because of a human. And Beatrice is like, no, you all died because of magic. and here, I'll show you some more ways that I can kill you all with magic.
Yeah.
Because from what it seems like, she's gonna sort of set everything back up, sort of put everything back to default, and then do it all over again. And it seems
Reconstruct the chessboard.
yeah, it seems like sort of she's already killed everyone, and now is like, here, you're still doubting me. Let me show you all over again how I can just keep doing it. Like I can keep throwing all these mysteries at you, and eventually you're gonna have to just admit that magic is real, and I'm real, and everything. It almost feels like she's already killed everybody, and now is just proving to Battler that she killed everybody.
And that's the interesting point here. I think you're on the right track. This is definitely the right way to be approaching this. Is that that's how we're going to continue the series. It's really funny to think that we're only an eighth through the entire series. We've got a long way to go. So yeah, there's a lot to look forward to. But I think this is a great.
This space.
Watch this space. I think you guys are probably going to start playing like as soon as we end this podcast. But one thing. Okay. So I think now would be a really good time to bring up the second tea party, the Ura Tea Party, as it's called, where we have.
I wanted to ask, actually, did you look into that? I think you wanted to know what to do. Like, why is it Ura Tea Party?
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
I believe Ura means hidden, and that's just like what the I believe the Japanese community took to calling it, instead of calling it the Tea Party, for those who are not human every time.
Or as I like to call it, question mark.
Or that, yeah. Yeah, so we have this scene which introduces a new witch called Berncastel, and she's talking with Beatrice the Endless Witch. Which is,
okay, there are multiple things. I quite enjoyed analyzing this specific part in my post, and this entire scene is full of weird stuff. So, even before the podcast, for context, we were talking about how weird it was that you come into this scene and they just start talking about tea, and you as the player are like, wait, explain what's going on first. What is this? Who is that? But yeah, specifically points of interest. This seems to be even further outside the scope of the game. Even to the point where they are directly referring to what happened on Rokkenjima as a game board. Yes,
they do use that word, don't they?
Yeah. Berncastel herself, not going into all the lore she drops about this apparent witch world involving Lambda Delta and all this hierarchy. Because there's a lot there. Yeah. And it's not all relevant, so I don't know if we need to all talk about it all.
Nah, yeah.
And also slightly spoilerific for certain things.
Okay. But yeah, it's like... And like what you mentioned just then, she's not Beatrice the Golden. She is Beatrice the Endless. So where does that distinction come from?
Yeah, where's that come from?
If Beatrice the Endless is her actual title, does Beatrice the Golden come from her legend in the human world? Like, do only humans know her as Beatrice the Golden? And like what I theorized myself was the even bigger mystery: what does Beatrice the Endless mean?
And they did talk about this a little bit in like the tips, I think, didn't they?
Yes. Let me see.
Well, wouldn't the Endless refer to what Berncastel was saying about how she was able to kill someone endlessly?
Yes,
right?
yes.
So,
right.
I kind of took it to mean that, but I mean, maybe it means something else.
Well, what do you think that means? Okay, go on, Ella.
I took it to mean, and it's because they directly, and I think this is actually really interesting for fiction, they directly talk about and acknowledge that the game is going to happen again.
Yeah.
So I took it to mean that, and the Endless refers to the time loop. Like, she's going to reset the board and she's going to play this game again. And it is the endless suffering of Rokujima or something.
It's like purgatory,
that
isn't it? Hey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
it's very interesting to actually that they're actually acknowledging that there's going to be a second route and it's going to be from the start again. It's going to happen. Apparently, I guess it's going to happen 8 times.
I feel like from a marketing standpoint, this was like the point where it's like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. Like, buy the next game. It's not over yet.
Yeah.
Because like, interesting point is the first episode of Umineko, when it was first released, it was released free, and all the subsequent episodes were like you have to pay for them. So the first one was kind of like a demo. So if you were interested after this point, you could be like, oh, this scene is like what's going to sell you on the rest of the series. It's like you just finished the trial version. Good job.
That's really good.
Yeah.
I would have been so in.
Hey man, you got any more of that Umineko for me?
Hey, I need another hit.
My favorite quote on all of Reddit was hey kid, want a life-changing experience? Just hands him a CD with Umineko on it and all the patch files. Whoever did that quote, I love you. But yeah, one thing I wanted to bring up was like you brought up how like endless refers to a time loop situation, but couldn't you also interpret that as the act of killing someone over and over?
Yeah,
isn't that the same thing?
Mentioned already.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I guess it's directly related.
So, yeah, I would say that those two are pretty related if you consider the act of killing someone endlessly would kind of imply a time loop, and in the context of the story, time loop would imply endless deaths. So I guess they're pretty interrelated.
And so, like, I guess you guys must be pretty excited to play the next game now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, man, I can't believe that you're making me wait until after the podcast.
I'm very interested in playing episode 2. Yeah.
Fuck you, Rebel.
I think he's the most interested out of all of us.
I hope it's cool.
You can use this opportunity to tease people if you want, since you just read it.
To leave you all with a hint of episode 2. You are right in assuming that episode 1 is just a setup. It is. You have now met the cast, you have now seen the game play. Now, from this point on, you are actually playing the game.
That's a really good way of putting it. Yeah. It's kind of like you've been introduced to the game board, but now you're actually becoming the player. It's very weird to think about, and I'm sure that sentence doesn't make much sense out of context, but you will soon understand what we mean by that. Yeah, like, not in the sense that it's like, oh, it's going to have choices, it's going to become a game. No, I don't mean like that.
No, it is still a linear visual novel, and I assume it's going to stay that way through the whole Umineko, because I don't see why it wouldn't. But from this point on, you will be directly jumping into the murder mystery. And I feel like this is like, I can almost consider episode 2 like the supplementary introduction, like. Yeah, it's still not entirely everything there, but by the end of episode 2, you will understand the setting almost entirely, you'll understand the cast, you'll understand the game, and you'll understand you'll basically understand everything you need to know to start directly tackling the murder mystery. It's kind of like what Burn Cell was teasing with the whole like rules of this game. But I think the one thing that you really want to take home from all these Tea Party shenanigans is the world of Umineko is very multi-layered. There's like, it's very counterintuitive. Like, even the concept of what's real and what's not becomes entangled when you start having Beatrice appear right in front of you. So it's very important from the ground up to get a handhold of like, there's like different layers going on here, and like things can be tackled from these different layers differently. I don't know, like, without giving too much away, like, that's basically what you need to start coming to terms with, and it's going to be even more apparent in the second episode, because you'll be seeing a lot more of Beatrice, because they're not done with her character yet. Don't worry.
I thought she was just a minor character.
No.
She's got a role in episode 2.
It's funny because I see a lot of people going to Umineko that might have been, like, it's kind of impossible to hear about Umineko and not know about Beatrice. Like, okay, there's a character called Beatrice in this game, therefore I can approach this from the perspective that Beatrice exists. But that's so wrong. It's like... So, thank you to everyone who participated in this tea party. It means a lot to me, like, especially that we got lots of people here that are completely new to Umineko. That really excites me. And getting to see all your theories and, like, knowing which ones might be true or not, it's really fun. And just, like, first impressions are so valuable to Rockenjima as a community, but also just to us guys, because... You know, we wish we could go back to the first time we read Umineko, so we're jealous of you guys. We're kind of vicariously living this experience through with you, so thank you for sharing that with us. I really appreciate it.
Hey.
We did get some fan art. Not much, but there was one particular member. Yeah, so on the forum, Gogopi posted a bunch of fan art of Battler and the Servants and Natsuhi and Beatrice and Maria, quite a bit actually.
Yeah, I actually just saw that myself.
Yeah, I'm gonna. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'll chuck it all up right now. But thank you very much for that. I hope we can get more fan art of future episodes too, because that's something like I really want to see more of with the tea pies. As sort of like an excuse to celebrate Umineko. And if you're like have any sort of creative talent, then I would really appreciate like any fan works you can contribute to for that celebration. Like it's a big Umineko festival, yay.
Hey.
But yeah, like just in terms of foreign discussion, I have to thank all of you guys who have been here today. Rabla, Seraphitic, and Notcon. And of course we have like Yarian, who couldn't be here today. He's another person who's been quite active in the discussion. And then we have CJ and Aizen Kobu. We have Renal and Karafine and myself. We're all very familiar with Umineko, but we have all like helped forward the discussion in the spoiler-free topic as well. And even aside from that, we also had the full series spoilers topic, which I created because we wanted to keep the normal topic clean. And shout out to Karafine for doing a fantastic recap of episode 1. Basically, he went through and looked at everything from the perspective of someone who knows the answers and was able to like dissect certain scenes and be like get different information and different perspectives that you wouldn't be able to get from just as a first time reader. And it was really cool. If you've already read Umineko, I strongly recommend checking that out. It's like really long and it took like quite a while to get through, but it's worth it. It's really cool. Oh yeah, shout out to CTom42, and yeah, I think he contributed a little bit as well. And who else? Witch of Games, they were there too in the general discussion.
There's a lot of people.
There's a lot of people
contributed overall.
Yeah. I see Eternal Magician and Usagi Tempura there as well for a couple of posts. But yeah, thank you to everybody who contributed on the forum. Like, really awesome. I hope we can keep it up for episode 2 and beyond. So episode 2 is going to last for the next 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, we're going to reconvene. Maybe not the same cast, maybe a couple of different people, but we'll reconvene for another podcast, and that's going to be really awesome fun. If you can, I strongly recommend keeping with the schedule of the tea parties, because if you go too far ahead, you won't be able to participate in the discussion. Like, you'll be spoiled, and then you're biased, and then that sucks for everyone. So, hold out. Episode 3 will be coming, like, maybe in a couple of months, like 2 months maybe. we gotta do it.
The cries of pain.
But, I highly recommend like making the most of that time to like go over your theories and like reassess everything, because that's half the fun of Umineko, just working towards answers in the time that you're waiting. That's something I really appreciated with like waiting for like the patches each for every couple of months. But
I'm just hearing Rabla sigh and
I know, because Rabla just really wants to binge it, but I really need to.
It's so good.
I need to emphasize that that's a bad idea, because then it'll just be done, and then it's like, oh, it's over now, and like I didn't even think about it. You know what I mean? you really need to like make use of this community I've provided to you guys. It's like it's going to help you so much and make it so much more enjoyable. But I'll aim to get the episode 3 podcast out as soon as possible. We just need to deal with a couple of other things too, like tomorrow after book club. But yeah, so you can look forward to that.
We should quickly clarify, despite saying all the stuff about taking a gap, the reason we all decided to do episode 2 straight away was because of what I mentioned earlier, where it is the continuation of the introduction.
Yeah, that's very important. And so I figured, like, it's good to get that away quickly.
Especially like I was the sample case where I finished episode 1 and I was like, I'm not done.
Yeah.
More, must have more.
I wanted to jump ahead too.
Good. I thank you guys for holding out. I do really appreciate it. And if, like, after we finish the episode 2 podcast, you want to read episode 3, I won't stop you, but try not to read episode 4. Because at least then we can, like, you won't be spoiled for the podcast if you do decide to go on it again. So, yeah, that's my advice to you guys. So yeah, I guess that's about everything for this podcast. We've gone way over time. I'm sorry for keeping you so long, but it's been amazing. I'm very happy with this podcast. Like, how do you guys feel about it?
Awesome.
It is amazing. I love this so much.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
Awesome. This is one of the less train wrecky podcasts I've done. But yeah.
Quick shout out to Bionic, Helios, it's Japanese. What's his name usually?
CJ.
CJ. Pepe was here. There's another person that's come
Epica.
in and out. Yeah, Epica. I think there was one more person that came in during the middle and has left. I cannot remember who they were.
Was it Beatrice the
But you know-
Golden?
Who?
Yeah, shout out to Beatrice.
Who? Gagler. Thank you, chat. Shout out to Gagler.
Thanks to our live audience for tuning in, and we hope to
Yes.
see you in future episodes. I don't know, I'd love to do a live stream, but I'm still weighing that possibility out. But yeah, this has been awesome fun, and I look forward to seeing you all again in 2 weeks for Turn of the Golden Witch. Is that
Yeah,
right?
Turn.
Yes. Okay.
Turn of
Good.
the Golden Witch.
For Turn of the Golden Witch. Thank you very much once again, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.